People think that I don't work for the treadmill company. I should. One guy wrote me a long email. He's like, are you just trying to make money for the treadmill companies? And I was thinking, no, but that's a good idea. It's funny how suspicious humans are. But, so today, we're going to talk on this formula, okay? Just to simplify it, I'll call it the 102K formula. So you might wonder how I came up with that number. It's not random. I was basically, one of the most common questions that I've had in life, I'm sure you've had it, is income. Your life, money isn't everything, but your life depends on your income, right? So if right now, magically someone came in and put your income to zero, all kinds of bad things would happen. And inversely, if somebody magically came in with a wand into your bank account and could push your income up, all kinds of cool stuff would happen too, or good stuff would happen. So this question of income, it's funny, I've been to 51 countries. I think I've actually been to more now. I need to update that number, but a lot of countries. Interestingly, one of my friends studies, just had a friend here from Norway who went to different countries like Papua New Guinea. He was basically I think he was in Sumatra and Indonesia. So there's no the modern world has not yet touched this village. He was doing a documentary deep in the jungle. Even there, what's important to them, they don't have paper money like us, but they have resources. The same thing you use your money for is universal. The Ashe Indians in Paraguay, the Hadza, there's a group of hunter-gatherers that are in Tanzania, Africa. All over the world, people are still needing to have food, shelter, and they want more than just the absolute Stone Age minimum because, for example, the reason it's okay to want more is your body gets old. So there's an old proverb years ago, from 10,000 years ago, that says it's good to bear the yoke in your youth. Meaning, while you have energy, it's good to burden yourself with doing more because when you're 80 years old, you won't be able to work like you are now. So you have to make more now so that you could compensate for later. So this is a universal thing. You don't have to feel guilty for it. Now, you don't want to be ruthless and try to make $1 trillion and hurt a whole bunch of people in the process of doing it, but you don't have to. So the cool thing about this talk, what I'm talking about is you and I are part of kind of a movement. There's a new generation. My grandma, I talk about her sometimes. She's born in a different generation, 1918. That generation had a different set of struggles. World War I was still going on when my grandma was born. I just saw her this weekend. And the way she thinks and the fears she has and the reward she had, it was completely different. My grandma got married to my grandpa. You couldn't really get divorced back then. So if you married somebody that wasn't nice for you, that was the old world. Divorce wasn't there. Birth control wasn't around. Back then, it wasn't an entrepreneurial world. You pretty much, whatever class you were born into, if you were born in the upper class, you stayed upper class. If you were born lower, you were born lower. My grandma had to immigrate she was born in Berlin, Germany. She had to, when the war and the bombs started falling, she had to come all the way to America alone at, early 20s. That's not a world that most of us live in. So the good news is, you and I are part of something, and that's what this talk is about. You got to take advantage of the opportunity of this new generation. And we live in a generation that has to do with this $102,000 formula. So the way I came up with it, here's the story. I was talking to somebody, and they were telling me how they didn't like their life. And I said, why? And they said, well, right now, I am under pressure. Okay? And all I can basically think about is just getting enough food for my family, for myself, paying rent. There's never enough left over. I'm going in debt, credit cards. And I said, well, how much money do you make? And they said around $11, and I think it was 70 some cents an hour. Okay, so they weren't making a lot. And there was a story behind it. I won't get into the whole story, but they got where they were working at, where they were making more, the company went bust. They were laid off, and they had to take a job that they didn't really like, and it wasn't a high-paying job. So they're making that much money. So a little bit above minimum wage. And so they were asking me, Tai, what would you do if you were me? And I got to thinking, and I'm going to share with you something crazy about this number. This number right here, if you could make $11.70 an hour, there's a way you could become wealthy just making $11.70 an hour. But you have to do one thing different. So I'm going to get to that in 1 second, okay? Now, here's you watching this. Some of you, I have all kinds of different people who follow the stuff that I do. There's people from 40 countries here. By the way, thanks for being on this call. I know some of you had to take time off work, and you had other things you could do with your time besides watching me on your phone or your computer. So here's your life. Here's like a timeline. So when it comes to income, pretty much everybody starts out here. So you and I are part of this new generation. It's not even a generation, because it's a new era. That's what we'll call it, okay? A new era in time. So I'm part of the same one as you. So I could predict that you're probably like me. When I was very young, let's say you're 5 years old, our income was at zero. I remember when I was 5 years old, I had an idea. I didn't like that. Actually, I was raised by a single mom when I was young. She got remarried when I was a little bit older. But back when I was 5 or 6, my mom didn't have much money, so she would give me an allowance of I think it was $10 a month. Pretty sure that's what it was. And I had to work for it. I had to do the dishes every day. I had to do this. So it was about $2. My income back then wasn't quite zero. It was $2.50 a week. It's not a good wage, but I was 5. And I had everything else taken care of. So maybe you had an allowance here. That was my weekly. So if you divide that up by 7, I was not making a lot of money. I was making about 30 cents a day. I got to talk to my mom about that. That seems like slave wages here. I guess she was taking care of everything else. So I was making 30 cents an hour, roughly. Now, when I was 18 after high school, I went and worked for this guy, Joel Salatin. And you're going to watch. I'm going to draw. I'm not going to get super complicated here with a graph, but it's just like a curve, and you'll see it. And so then I didn't make much more as a teenager. I didn't really have much money at all. Didn't have money for a car when I was 16. I was bummed. All my rich friends got a car. I had to walk. I played basketball, so I had to. We lived in Raleigh, North Carolina then. I was born in California, but we moved, and I played basketball, and it was at 5 in the morning. So back then, I wanted a car, but my stepdad and mom didn't have much money, and they also didn't, whatever money they had, they weren't going to spend on getting me a car. So I had to walk 1 mile down this thing and wait for my basketball coach said, Tai, I don't have time to pick you up, but I do go down this one street. If you will come and stand out there, I'll pick you up, but I only have time to just like kind of slow down and you jump in the car. He actually would stop all the way. He didn't do a rolling stop, but it was basically just, if I wasn't there, he'd just keep driving. So it was about 1.5 miles. And I remember I used to have to wake up at 4 in the morning because basketball practice started at 5 before school, 5 to 7, and we had to take a shower, and school started at 7:30. So I would wake up at 4 in North Carolina. It's kind of nasty weather a lot of times. snows occasionally, rains a lot. So I'd be sitting there walking, and I remember when I was at this stage, because I had my income actually went down, which is horrible. I was making more money at 5 years old than I was at 16. And I would wait for this guy, Coach Stewart, and it was cool because I could look down and it was like a 2-mile thing, and I would see he had this horrible car. I forget what it was. You wouldn't have wanted this car. It was like a Pinto or something like that. And I would see a Pinto had like weird lights, so I could see the little dink of the light, and I knew it was him. And I'd be like, yes, because it was raining or whatever, get in the car. So my income plummeted. That's at 5 years old, 16 years old. Then it went up at 18 a little bit. Now, going back to this, I'm gonna tell you this story, but I'm gonna fast forward all the way, let's say, where you pick an age. This can be any age, but older than 5, once you're out of the house, okay? So let's say your income could get up to here compared to where you are 5. What would change? Because this is an important question because people forget. I was actually talking to my team. I left a memo for the staff of one of my companies, and I was saying, you got to imagine, because imagination is the beginning of everything. Some people call it visualization. I don't really like visualization. It's kind of a weird word because visualization is where people just go, oh, my life sucks, and now I visualize it being awesome, and then I wake up and it's awesome. And I don't think it works that way. You have to earn it. I was for those of you in the VIP program, I was going over Arnold Schwarzenegger's book. I got to hang out with him last month at his movie, and he says one thing his dad told him and his mentors in bodybuilding, you have to earn it. So when you just think you visualize it, it's almost like saying, the visualization is me earning it. That's not what I'm talking about. Imagining, though, is drawing a map, and there's a big difference. When you imagine your vision, then what you're doing is drawing a map of where you want to go. And I forget how the saying goes. It says, be careful of not planning because you'll get your plan. Fail to plan, fail to get what you want. So if you take a second, if you imagine yourself here at a future date from where you are now, if you could get, let's just say $102,000 a year. Now, some of you are already making more than that. So if you're watching this and you're already making $102,000, then add another couple zeros, okay? Change it to the 1 million. $200,000 formula, 1.2 million. Or you could multiply times 500,000. But going up, life should be going up. You'll have momentary blips like I had from 5 to 16, but you want to go up. So imagining, we begin to draw the mental map, and I still do this now. So this is not some cheesy exercise. I think it's absolutely vital in the first step. So I probably spend 10% of my day imagining alternate realities for what I'm doing now. Okay? So I'm going to write that down. Let's imagine, and I'll show you how I do it, alternate realities. Now, I'm going to warn you, sometimes this is a very wonderful experience, and sometimes it's a very traumatic experience. I'll give you an example of a wonderful one. One day, one of my visions, I'd love to own part of a professional basketball team. I was actually offered a year or two ago to buy a percentage of the Miami Heat. I wasn't ready for it, so I didn't, and it was a complicated deal. But the point is, I got close. I saw it a little bit, didn't quite get it, but it got my imagination stirred up even more. Now, another thing that I imagine alternate reality, I was in San Diego this last weekend visiting my grandma, and my friend took me to where he works. It's called Illumina. They do DNA sequencing. And after we toured his buildings, pretty cool. Like I got my DNA decoded. You should try it sometimes. It's very cheap now, 75 bucks. You can figure out your ethnicity. So I now know my ethnicity down to 1%. It's not exactly what you think, you know. I'm German. I'm about everything except Asian. I have no Asian genes, but I have, or DNA, but I got lots of other stuff. So I was at this big Illumina building and it got my imagination going. And so we went to dinner after, and while I was there, I just Googled on my phone Illumina, the story. Because I don't want to have a huge biotech company, but I like to get my alternate realities going. So a handful of guys started it, I think back in the 1990s. They took a patent from a college, they bought the license to it, and now the company makes $3 billion a year. They're making $300 million a quarter, okay? And it's a profitable company. There's 3,000 employees there. And so it just got my mind going, like expanded, because, you know, that's a lot of money. And I built businesses that make money, but I haven't built a $3 billion company yet. But it starts with that lunch. We were having dinner at UTC, if you've ever been to San Diego, University Town Center, the little mall there. And I was thinking, what would be different in my life if I had a company doing $3 billion a year? And they make about 12% profit. You can read about companies. If you ever want to get your imagination, there's a public place that it's called a 10K. Every publicly traded company has to just share everything about them. So there's a 10K. Some of it's boring, but some of it's very interesting. For example, I learned something. They changed how they had their companies. They put some of their companies overseas, and their profit went up a couple $100 million by changing the tax structure. So that also got my reality alternative. I was like, I didn't know that. But one thing that was cool there that's relevant for everybody is this thing was just like an acorn. One of my mentors, Alan Nation, said, I was down in Mississippi once, and there's these trees called live oaks. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're in movies sometimes. They're huge trees. They just like spread out, you know, across a whole front yard. And in front of one, he picked up a little acorn. It was literally that big. And he goes, it's always crazy to me. I never get used to it, that huge tree all comes from that. That's cellular, you know, replication. I think they call it meiosis or whatever. That's growth. And when I was 5, you're just a little kid when you were 5. But when you begin to imagine alternate realities, what you're imagining is the splitting of the cells. And think of that financially. It's like, what if I can take what I'm doing now, build on it, and it keeps replicating until, in that case of that company, Illumina, $3 billion. Imagine if they're making $300 million a quarter. So they're making about 100, no more. Sorry, they're making, I think, 500 million. I forget what it is. It's a couple $1 billion a year. Imagine if you were making, you know, that much money, a couple $100 million a month. People are doing it. And it started by just people like that are on this call. It's always, when you go back to the acorn, you're always surprised. Every once in a while, it's a super genius, you know. It's some Einstein person that starts these things that become huge. But there's also stories like Virgin Airlines. Richard Branson was dyslexic, so was not good at school. He dropped out of school at a high school. He didn't finish high school, 15 years old. You talk about this replication. He has 20 companies. He's almost the biggest business person, and his income is, so high he doesn't even know what to do with all the money. Think what all the cool stuff Richard Branson does. You know what Richard Branson does? And what you, using these tools we're going to talk about today, potentially could become? He does whatever he wants. That's what Richard Branson does. For example, Richard Branson didn't like email at the beginning. You know, he's kind of old. So he didn't use email for 10 years. Everybody had to call him on the phone. He wanted to I remember there was a time Richard Branson decided he needed a break with his family. He just bought a huge ranch in South Africa and went down there and had one phone, like an old phone, like the President of the United States has, like that phone you press a button for the nuclear, all that stuff. He just had like one red phone, and he would check it once a day. He would call, and he was running this whole business empire, hundreds of millions of dollars being made, and he would just check it once a day because he was a person who took imagination and turned it into an airline. You know his story. He was visiting. Here's a cool. Richard Branson's a great example of this. There's a good book I did a review of called "Screw It, Just Do It," something like that. Screw it, let's do it. Yeah, and it talks about his story. He had an imagination about what interested him when he was about 15 or 16. It was back in the Vietnam War. He wanted to write about. He didn't like how the government was, so he took his imagination. He saw magazines, and he's like, "I'm gonna have a magazine." So he started a magazine at 16 years old. It blew up. It was a big magazine. And it was cool. He's like, I was living the life. He got arrested. He used to do protests. It was like those, the 60s things. But then he's like, what else am I interested in? Music. Are you interested in music? I'm interested in music. The difference between me and you and Richard Branson is he took his imagination. He's like, let me start something. So he's in London. He starts up this little office. It becomes Virgin Music. Huge, man. They signed every big, not every, but tons of the famous artists back in, I think, the 80s. Then he had this dream. He didn't have much money then. It was just, he was investing back in his business. He's like, I got this idea. I want to buy a desert island. I think he saw a picture in a magazine. He was like, this would be beautiful. What if I had my own island? But he had no money. So everybody's like, what's wrong with you? He flies down to the Caribbean, and he starts looking at islands, and he found one for $200,000. I think he still owns it now. Necker Island, I think he renamed it or something. I'm not exactly sure the name, but he was there, and he goes, great, I found my island. Now remember, this is a long time ago. $200,000 was like $1 million plus, $2 million, and he had no money. But when you imagine alternate realities, you don't let a little thing like reality bother you. So the reality was bank account zero, but he was in an alternate reality. So everybody else in the world would have looked at that and go, island costs 200 grand, you have zero, you won't get it. But not Richard Branson. He was different than almost everybody you've ever met. Remember, this is a dyslexic kid, not book smart. Okay, no one in school was like, this guy's most likely to become the next billionaire. Nobody. He drops out of school, so he doesn't have a college degree. He also doesn't have even a high school diploma. Now, I'm not saying you should drop out of high school. I'm just telling you the true story. Now, he figured out a way. He eventually got that island. He figured out a way to negotiate the deal, a way to get somebody else to help him put the money in, and boom, he has an island. But he was down at that island at one point, and a huge storm hit. Such a big storm that no airline could fly out of there, and he was stuck. And he didn't want to be stuck. So he imagined an alternate reality, and he rented a charter plane. He chartered a plane, not like a huge, nice one, just found somebody who'd fly him off the island. And he said, wait a second, everybody around me in this town also wants to get out of here. And I just had to pay, I forget how much it was to charter, $1,000 or something. So he said, what if I sold everybody here a ticket, instead of me getting on the plane alone? Who cares about me being on the plane alone? Like, I just want to get out of here. He starts selling tickets to everybody on the island that wants to get, and guess what? Not only did he make all his money back for the cost of the flight, but he made a profit. Boom, guess what he was in? The airline business. That's the story of how Virgin Airlines started. Him being stuck on an island. So again, most people stuck on an island, you know what most people on that island were doing? Whining and complaining. They were mad. And you can't get mad at Mother Nature. She doesn't care. But most people, that's how they are in life. You probably have friends like that who are like, oh, I don't make enough money. I'm mad at the government. I'm mad at the Illuminati. I get people talking to me about the Illuminati. I don't know if there is Illuminati, but I do know this. If there isn't an Illuminati, you shouldn't be talking about it because it doesn't exist. And if there isn't an Illuminati, who cares? Because if there is an Illuminati, they're too powerful for you to take down. So just go with the flow. If there was an Illuminati, Richard Branson did okay in a world with an Illuminati. So does Mark Zuckerberg seems to be doing okay. So does the kid who started Snapchat. He made $1.5 billion before he was 24. So I think we're okay. And blaming doesn't work very well because there's always people not blaming doing better. And that's what Richard Branson did. Instead of blame, you want to imagine. So let's take a second. I want to read some of the things, some imaginations. Now, there is a danger. You can't just imagine alternate realities all day. That's why I said I probably spend about 10% of my day doing that. Then I probably spend, in terms of getting stuff done, I spend another 40% of my day planning. You got to have strategy. It's not just imagination. Then comes strategy. Strategy. And then third comes execution. You got to do all three of these. So let's just say I spend about 10% doing that. I hate that pen. Not a good pen. I spend about 40% of my working time doing that and about 50% executing. So you'll see what will happen here. But if you're not careful, if you don't do the first one, this is what your life's going to do. You're not going to make much when you're young, and it's going to go up a little bit, and then it's going to plateau. So the average person, they kind of go like this. Then when they get old, it goes down again. This is a plateau. Be careful of the plateaus. Some of you are in a plateau state. Now, it's okay to grow slowly. You don't have to grow like that. In fact, very few people just grow straight to massive money status. As long as it goes up a little bit, occasionally you'll hit little bumps, but as long as the general trend is up, it's okay. You don't need to become a millionaire overnight. In fact, it's dangerous to make money too fast. Most people, look at Mike Tyson. He went from a kid from the Bronx or Brooklyn or whatever, and he made money too fast, and now he had no money. $600 million he made, he says, and then he was borrowing rent money. I reading the book about Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson, if you watch basketball, he was the most valuable player in the NBA, #1 basketball player in the world, and made hundreds of millions of dollars. And now he got evicted out of his house a couple years ago. Lost his house, lost everything, you know? So if you make money too fast, it's easy. The Amish, I lived with the Amish when I was younger for a couple years, and the Amish used to say, Tai, a fence that goes up fast falls down fast. Build the fence slowly and it'll stay up for a lifetime. So if you do these three things, it'll go up and it'll stay up. So going back to imagining, let's take for a second, take a few comments below this video and leave some comments leave a few. Not everybody needs to do this, but if you have a cool one, an alternate reality that you're imagining, maybe you're like Richard Branson, you know, what would you do if you had more money? If your income was going up and your net worth? First thing I did, I was sleeping in a mobile home on a couch. First thing I did, my alternate reality was get a bed of my own. And I remember doing that. I went and moved in with 2 other guys. I found a Craigslist or something, and they had a room for me. I remember I was up the stairs. One dude was super loud. He'd play crazy loud music. He was in the room next to me, but it was still better than sleeping on a couch. So my reality was slowly getting better. All 3 of us had the same birthday. It was crazy. I found that out after. I don't know what the odds of that. Somebody should do the math on that. 3 random people all born the exact same day without knowing each other before. Then my reality, I didn't have a car. You know, people see Ferraris and Lamborghinis. I think maybe I have those because I always had car issues growing up. 16, I had no car. I had to walk. Then the first car I finally got was this car, a 1981 Toyota Corolla. I don't think it was a Corolla. What's below a Corolla? No, like is the Corolla the Celica? I had the lowest Toyota, and it was also a 1981, and it was a stick shift. It was always braking. Had a hole in the floor where you put by the gas pedal. It was 2 different colors, I remember. I don't know what happened to it. It got in a crash. It was gray on the top and like dark gray on one door. I was embarrassed of it. So first thing I did after I got a better place, then I imagined like, oh, what if I have a better car? And I bought a Mitsubishi Galant for $7,000. I thought it was a white Mitsubishi Galant. I bought it from a car rental place. And I thought it was a badass car. I remember I took the car, the day I bought it was on Valentine's, and I was dating this French girl. Be careful of French girls, they're tricky. Hopefully there's no one French on here, but, and I said, it's Valentine's Day and I have a surprise I want to show you. So I drove over to her place and I had this white Mitsubishi Galant and I was like, check it out. And apparently she wasn't impressed because she came in and sat in the passenger seat and she's like, Tai, I have some news to tell you. And I'm like, what? You don't like the car? And she's like, I'm in love with my roommate. So she broke up with me. That was the most sad I think I've ever been about a girl because it was on Valentine's. I'm like, you don't know it's Valentine's? Don't do it a day before at least. Don't do it on, and don't do it on my amazing car celebration day of my Mitsubishi Galant. But, and I remember, it's funny, I didn't grow up with my dad, but I knew him a little bit then, so it was raining. It was in North Carolina, always freaking raining there. So she got out of the car and left. She was like, sorry. And I was like, okay. And so I turned around and started driving home. And I remember just being super sad. I was like, I got to talk to somebody. So for some reason, it's the only time in my life I've called my dad for advice. So I'm like, Dad, here's the story. And I remember my dad had no empathy. He's like, you'll find another one. Don't be sad. Like, stop being a wimp. Basically, that's what he said. He's like, there's lots of girls in the world. Bye. And he hung up. And I remember being like, okay, note to self, do not call Dad for sympathy at all. He had no sympathy. But believe it or not, he was actually right. There was, because I was like, there'll never be a girl like this. It's funny with your exes, you look back and you're like, I'm not sure why I thought that was the only girl on the planet. I mean, she's an awesome girl, but by the way, I know now the scientific reason. You have an area of your brain called the attachment. It's not an exact area, but a function in your brain called the attachment function mechanism. And what it basically does, it uses, your brain is a big drug dealer. People forget. Your brain's the biggest drug dealer on the planet. And it deals out some drugs. One of them's called oxytocin. You know, you get these dopamine ones, and it makes you attached to somebody. So be careful who you get attached to. Anyway, so that's my story. Believe it or not, it got better from the Mitsubishi Galant. I started making more money, and it becomes a cooler reality. You start not having to do stuff you don't like. You stop having to be around people you don't want to be around. When you need a break to think, you start having a break. You also, if your income could go up, you know what else happens? All the cool plans you've ever had, you can actually act on. There's millions of people. Maybe you're one of them. I was one of them. You have good ideas, but you can't do them. You cannot pull them off because it takes a little bit of money to do them. It doesn't take millions of dollars, but you know, one cool thing, like now, if I have an idea, because I love ideas, I love new ideas, I can afford to do them. Even if they fail, I can experiment. And a life without any money to experiment is a crappy life. You know, when I was here, I did a business, my first business, I was around 19 years old. And 19, and I was with Joel Salatin. This is my age, by the way. And my income went up, and I made $12,000. And you know what I did with that money? I used it to find more mentors, because Joel Salatin was a mentor, and I went from making no money to making $12,000 extra dollars, because I was making a little bit of extra money. I was making like $400 a month plus living expenses on this farm with Joel Salatin. Then I did this side business and I got another $12,000, which was a ton of money for me back then. And I used that money. Remember how I said if you had more money right now, you can do experimentation. So I used that money and I bought plane tickets. I flew from Virginia and I flew all the way to Australia, then Tasmania, then I went back to New Zealand. I actually ran out of money in New Zealand. Sorry, the lights were going out. I thought we were losing power. And then I'm in New Zealand and I ran out of money, so I had to shear sheep. So I sheared enough sheep to make enough to buy an airplane ticket. Then I flew to Japan. I checked out Tokyo a little bit, Japan a little bit. Then I was like, I still have money. So I flew and went to Ireland. Then it was cool. It's still a cool thing to do. And you can't do that if your nose is to the grindstone and your bank account is always like, just goes up, down, one step forward, one step back. So then eventually, and remember, this is the story, not just my story. Even though I don't know you, I'm pretty sure you've had a little bit of this similar life where you didn't make much, you figured out a way to make a little bit more. When you had more, your life was cooler. When you had some extra dollars, it was a better life. And then, mine went back down because I had mentors, but they weren't money mentors. And that's a key thing. You have to have money mentors. Joel Salatin didn't care about money. Joel Salatin cared about, he was one of the guys who kind of started organic food and all that in the world. So he was really into food, and he was into happiness, and he was into all that good life stuff, but he wasn't into money. So I didn't have money mentors. So, and by the way, the worst thing is when you have money and then you don't have any. That's better than never having it at all. Ask Mike Tyson. Ask Allen Iverson. Ask Donald Trump. He made all this money, then he lost $9 billion. He was $9 billion in debt. People don't realize that about Donald Trump. He's kind of a crazy dude, but that's a cool story. Most people, if they were $9 billion in debt, would take a gun and shoot themselves. He took that low and he imagined an alternate reality, and now he's richer than he's ever been. Now he has about $7 billion. So that's, by the way, a $16 billion change. $9 billion down, he built that back up and made another $7 million. That's pretty hard to do. So I went down, and maybe you've been down. Maybe that's a lot of times why people come on this call. They're down. And this is a very important place because this is what I call a crossroads event. I was actually just talking to someone today, a very famous girl that's one of the top models in the world. And she's a friend of mine, and we were talking, and she is at this crossroads event. I was texting her right before I got on this call, and I said, you got to be careful right here. Because what happens right here is about 2 different stories can play out in your life. It pretty much goes either you recover and go up, or you go down. You usually don't plateau here. You usually don't go down and then stay flat. You ever heard that saying, if you're not growing, you're going backwards kind of thing? So I told her, you better figure out what you're doing, and you better do it quick, because the way your brain works, right here, if you don't go up, depression kicks in. And depression is a nasty emotional state. Because what happens with depression? Well, they call it a race to the bottom. It's a spiral. So think about this. It's the same thing as happens when you get really fat. So let's say you stop working out, you start eating a lot. That's a lot of times goes alongside with depression too. Then what happens? Well, you get fatter, you get more out of shape, so you don't want to move, you don't want to exercise. And a lot of studies show you start getting addicted to sugar even more. You change, it's called neuroplasticity, your brain changes. You go into a state where sugar, fat becomes even more appealing. Then you start sitting more, and the next thing you know, you just go, you see those people on TV that are like 800 pounds or whatever, and you wonder how the heck could they get there? Remember, every 800-pound person in the world that's obese started out as a little baby in their mother's womb that wasn't even the size of an acorn, smaller than an acorn. So if you're not careful, you will spiral. And this happens with money, because then what happens, you don't make enough, so you're forced to take a job you don't like. Once you take a job you don't like, you don't have enough to pay the bills, so you get credit cards, or you borrow money from somebody. Boom, you add credit cards. And Warren Buffett, the 3rd richest man in the world, he says, be careful. He said, if you get off track at the beginning, It'll take you a decade to catch back up. Credit card rates can be up to 25 to 30%. That's hard to pay back. You take $10,000 in credit card debt, you got to pay back $3,000 just to pay the interest, not even to pay the loan down. So most people can't even pay the loan down. That's called negative amortization. That's a fancy word for saying you start owing even more. Your debt stacks up. College debt. People come out of college now with huge amount of debt. They can't find a job. That's the spiral. And then you find what happens. The average American, if you include homes, which is not as bad a debt, but is about $220,000 in debt. And a lot of it is consumer debt, the bad debt. House debt can be okay if you have a mortgage on your home. But in 2008, it didn't work for most people to even have a mortgage. Most people crashed there. So you get it, and that's 2008. Look at the American economy, global economy actually. It started to spiral down and everybody's like, oh, it's temporary. No, it can go down for a long time. My grandma that was in a depression, Germany was in a depression back in 1918. They didn't get out of it till, it can be a decade, it can be 20 years, it can be 50 years. Look at Russia. You can have huge problems, and that's the same with your individual life. And here's the problem. A country lives forever. So if it has 50 years bad life, who cares? But you don't. So if you get in this nasty spiral, boom, then you take on more debt. You get less. We all know somebody who thinks nothing will change. So you go, oh man, you can improve. And they're like, no, everything I do, it gets worse. I make less money. I fail at every job. Adam Carolla wrote a book called Not Taco Bell Material. He's a super funny guy. He's a comedian. And he says that he got in one of these spirals and he got rejected from Taco Bell. He tried to get a job there. Taco Bell's like, no, you're not good enough for us. So we all have friends like that or a place in your life. And what ends up happening, and I would say about 80% of people who go in this death spiral, their life never recovers. And if it does, they're too late to enjoy it. Maybe they recover at 60 years old, 80 years old. That's a nasty life. So if you're at the crossroads, you need to go up and don't even let that start. If you've already let this start, you better nip it in the bud. If it's been going for a year, nip it in the bud. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 14 or if you're 70. Remember, some of these debts, the bank that you owe money, if you take out college debt, now I'm not anti-college, but I am anti-college in the way it's being done now. College is just a tool. So university can be good, just like a tool, but it's not automatically good, and that's the problem. People think just because you go to university it's good. No, it's not that simple. There's no tool that's always good. A hammer is not always good. It's great if you're building a house. It's horrible if somebody's chasing you with it and try to hit you on the head. That'll be your worst nightmare. So that's the same thing with university. That's the same thing with college, with debt. That's the same thing with credit cards. They're powerful tools. So if these tools have brought you out, you got to get up. So now that I've told you all that, and you imagine yourself right here for a second. For some of you, maybe you like cars like me. So maybe you have a Ferrari, Lamborghini here. Maybe you like cars. I hope that's not your only goal in life, but maybe that's a little reward to give yourself. Maybe you're like Richard Branson. You're doing lots of cool stuff. Or Elon Musk. You got SpaceX. Jeff Bezos. He started Amazon. Now, in his spare time, he's building a rocket ship down in Texas. He bought a 2,000 acre or 20,000 acre ranch, and he's building a rocket ship there. Maybe that's you. Maybe you like cool stuff like that. Maybe you're a family type. So you're going to make sure your kids are taken care of. You're going to help your mom out. You're going to help your grandma out. All these people that have struggled all their life, you're going to take care of it. Maybe you're a charity-minded person. Maybe you can go out there and start a foundation, change the world. But for sure, if you're here, you're going to do what you want, what you're passionate about. The average person in the world, I saw a survey, spends 88% of their day, 88% of their life doing stuff they don't like and aren't interested in. If that's you, you're in the death spiral. It's okay to not be making $1 million a year or even $100,000 a year if you're making progress and you're doing something you're interested in. And let me be clear on this. You will never get 100% of your day to be things that you like. I'm going to tell you why. One, you always have to pay taxes, which means you got to do your taxes and you got to do accounting. Nobody on the planet is that excited to do their taxes, but you got to do it. So there's actually a good book that I read recently by some scientists, The Upside of Your Dark Side by Cashton is his name. It's not important for this talk, but they said when they studied the human body and stress hormones like cortisol and things, you should have about 20% of your life should be stressful. So it's okay if every day there's about 20% of your life that you're not super excited about. So on a 24, let's say you're awake, you sleep 8 hours, you're awake 16 hours, 20% of that is about 3 hours a day. So Joel Salatin, it's interesting that scientists found the same thing that my mentor Joel Salatin said. He said, every day you got to do chores, okay? And chores, they're not horrible, but they're also, no one wakes up and goes, you know why my day is going to be great? I got to milk cows today. No, but if you're on a farm, it's a requirement to keep the whole thing going. So, but the problem is most people spend 20% of their life doing what they want. It's backwards. Most people, so you should spend, when you get, your income goes up, you're going to be able to start spending 80% of your time, okay, which is about 13 hours a day, on what you want. If you like music, you can do music. If you like to travel, you'll be able to do travel. If you like to do family stuff, you can do the coolest family stuff for 13 hours a day. 3 hours a day, you're going to have to grind out life. That is just the way it is. And what this book says is, for example, little children that are never exposed to any germs, their immune system doesn't get tough. So if you take a little kid and put them in a bubble, totally sanitary, if you wash their hands 100 times a day with antibacterial soap, their immune system never strengthens. And you need a strong immune system to survive. So if you get your life where 100% of your life is just, going to movies, traveling, playing music, hanging out with friends, you'll get weak. So you need 3 hours a day to stress you a little bit, because the strength, it's like the philosopher Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So you need some of that stress. So when you get here, I'm not promising you 24 hours a day of pure bliss. That's unrealistic. But you can set it up where most of your life, the majority of your life, is spent doing things you care about. Some of you are inventors. Some of you are homebodies. Some of you are readers. Some of you are music people. Some of you are travelers and explorers. You got to get into that place, or else the only alternative is the death spiral. And the death spiral, going back to this story, is where my friend was, making $11.70 an hour. This actually wasn't even a friend. I get 1,000 people email me a day. It was a while back, somebody emailed me and it got me thinking. I started to imagine an alternative reality. And I'm going to tell you, I realized there's an alternative reality where $11.70 is making you the same income as a doctor, because the average doctor in the world makes less than this. In the United States, the average doctor makes about $113,000 a year. In countries like Argentina, where the top doctors only make the equivalent of about $50,000 a year. So if you average it together, there's a way making $11.70 an hour, you're going to make the same as a doctor. But you got to follow an alternate reality about income. So let me show you this. I might need another one of these. All right, take your calculator. Take a calculator here. All right. I've got my calculator. Now, just type in $11.70. Okay, so just type in your calculator, $11.70. Now, how many days are there? How many hours are there in a day? How many hours does the average person work? Sorry. 8 hours, right? So multiply it by 8 hours. So what is that? Times 8. So the average person who's making $11.70, which is kind of a wage that if you're at the low end, it's a little above minimum wage. You're making $93 a day, $93.60. Okay. The average person works 5 days a week, okay? And let's say takes about a month off with vacations, sick days, national holidays, okay? So what we're going to do is take 93.60 here, and we'll multiply it times 5 days a week, right? Times about 44 weeks, let's say. Or we could go a little higher. 11 months times 4 weeks, right? Around 44 weeks, let's say. And that would be 8 weeks off. And I meant 8 weeks off, not 1 month off. The average person, when you average in sick days and this and not productive and having to pick up the kids and vacations, let's just pick that number. We can change it if we want to. So what does that add up to? So $93 a day times 5 days times 44. So that's around $20,000. All right, so, and this is obviously low. There's a lot of you making more than this, okay? But that's just what this person emailed me. So I'm just telling you the story of how my brain works. And this applies to you, whatever income you make. So let's just say they're making $20,000. Now, I want you to imagine an alternate reality, because this is the reality for me financially, where I've changed the structure of how income is, and it makes all the difference in the world. So watch this. What if $11.70 an hour, okay, but what if 24 hours a day, that much money was being made, okay? Times 24, what's 11.70 times 24 here? Hours a day. This is crazy. This is gonna, no one's ever told you this, because no one's ever told me this, which is very annoying. All right, I just changed my calculator to cosines. All right, and trigonometry. Okay, 11.70 times 24 hours. Now, you're making $280 a day and 80 cents. Another reality, what if that much money flows in 365 days a year? Not 44 weeks, every day, 52 weeks. So now we're making $280 and 80 cents, but times every day. Times 365 is right around $102,000 a year. Which reality do you want to live in? $20,000 a year or $102,000 a year? Remember, it's still only making 11 bucks an hour. This is a game-changing concept. Now, some of you might think, yeah, that's obvious. If you work more, it's not obvious. Have you ever thought about it like this? Be honest. Did anyone ever tell you this? So what has to happen? Well, this is called a business consultant like Peter Drucker, somebody from Harvard. They would call this productivity. A change in productivity. Meaning, this is what productivity means. It means it's the same life, but in those days, you get more out of it. So instead of just getting 8 hours of income times 44 weeks, you get a full-on 24/7, 365 productivity boost, and you're making $102,000. But if your friends ask you how much you make an hour, you just tell them, I make 11 bucks an hour. And they're gonna be like, 11 bucks an hour? How are you affording, that Mercedes? Or how come you take a vacation when you want to? Or how come you have this cool apartment or house and I'm still struggling? How'd you do it? You tell them, oh, I only make $11.70 an hour, but I use the time given me more productively than the average person making $11.70. See, the big scam in the world is that we've separated life and income. So we go, this is my income earning time, and this is my life time. Let's say you got a huge raise, okay? You triple your pay. That's a lot. The average raise in the world is 1% to 3% a year. Let's say you get a 300% raise. So now, $11.70, you're making, roughly 35 bucks an hour. You'd still only be making 60 or 70,000 bucks a year. You'd still lose to the person making $11.70. This is a mind-expanding thing for most people. Even if you understand automated income, you got to ask yourself, at 2 in the morning last night, did you make any money? And if the answer is no, you haven't yet tapped in to what I'm talking about right now. This world of a productive and wealthy and prosperous is the best word, alternative reality. So what do you have to do to get this world? Well, so I was thinking about this, and I realized this is what my mentors, I've had 5 mentors. Like I said, some of them were money people and some weren't. Joel Salatin taught me about other stuff. Some people like Alan Nation was a little more money focused. Dr. Gordon Hazard, a guy named Walter. I've got a mentor now. Some of these guys, I don't say their last name just because they're like billionaires. They don't like to be talked about. In fact, some of them don't even know I talk about them on these calls. And they would be mad if they did, but I don't give away any personal details, so I'm not betraying their trust. That's why. So another guy named Richard, he's a mentor now. These are guys way older than me, in their 60s and 70s that have made hundreds of millions of dollars. And I realized that this alternative reality is the reality they taught me. That's the reality they've been in for a long time. That's how they have private jets and 50,000 square foot houses. And it's just something, we're part of a generation, you and I, not a generation, an era where what's on that page before was not explained. It was not explained to me. When I was sleeping on the couch, wasn't explained. It wasn't explained to the person who emailed me. It was a girl who emailed me about this $11.70 an hour. She was on a death spiral from that. She was like, $11.70 an hour. I don't know how to get out of this. My debts are going up. My stress is going up. My money is going down. And I'm also losing energy and passion for life. I don't know what I'm going to do. So how do you get out of it? And so what I began to do is put together, as you know, most of you know, I give a lot of stuff away free. I share my life and what I'm learning from books. I read a book a day. Some of you have seen my TEDx talk. It's I think it's the fastest growing one in the world right now if you haven't seen it. I don't know if it's good, but it's at least people want to see it. I guess they want to see if I'm full of crap or not. I was driving yesterday from the Grove, and at night I usually take the Ferrari. It's black, and I don't know why. My brain's like, oh, it's night. I should take the black Ferrari. In the day, I usually take the Ferrari. At night, the Lamborghini. And I pulled up at a light, and a guy pulled up next to me, and I couldn't understand their accent. And they were from a small village in Ireland, they said. And they're like, oh, you're the TEDx guy, man. You're like, I forget what they said. It was a cool story. I get cool stories all the time. And it's not because I'm cool. It's because this stuff is not me. I didn't write all these books, But I talk about in that TEDx talks how knowledge can change your life, how books changed my life, how mentors changed my life. It's called the law of 33%. And it's some of what I'm talking about now. But I'm going a lot further because that TEDx talk, you only get 18 minutes. What I'm talking about now, it takes a little longer to explain. But I've been in recently, I realized, and my companies do different things. We invest in different businesses, but we've been focused now on knowledge-based products. So I'm always on the lookout for, remember I was telling you about that model that I was talking about, one of the top models? We're building a knowledge-based product around her for fitness. She's in super good shape. We're building it around all these different fitness experts. So I'm always on lookout for a cool product. that's knowledge based, that, you know, products change the world. Like an iPhone is a product produced by Steve Jobs. It probably changed your life. The internet is a product. Some guy came up with it, basically. It was a government or military, I think, program, and then Google created a product. It's called the search engine, and Facebook is a product. So products, a lot of times people think, are just like stuff you buy in a store. No, they're life-changing things if they're good products. There's a lot of junky products out there which don't enhance your life, but I'm always looking for enhancing ones. And I realized this person, when I started pulling out the calculator and thinking about what my mentors told me, and think about my own life experience, and think about what all the great money makers, people like Richard Branson, wrote in his book, I realized there's a formula. I'm gonna call it, you know, the money formula. And so I began to create something around that. And what we're doing on this call is kind of an overview of that. Because the actual money program, it can't be taught in one day. So let me just tell you this little word of warning for the rest of your life. Anytime somebody tells you something, how your life's gonna change in too short of a period of time, do not believe them. They might be a scam, or they might not know what they're talking about. Most people aren't scams. They honestly don't know what they're talking about. So for example, if you see a weight loss program that's like how to lose 30 pounds in 30 days, just ignore it. I mean, you can read and find little nuggets of truth, but you know what happens to people who lose 30 pounds in 30 days? It's called a yo-yo diet. The average person who diets, a good example of somebody who admits that this is a problem for them is Oprah Winfrey. She says, I have a problem with yo-yo dieting. If you go back and watch Oprah through the years, there was a time when she was big, and there was a time when she was skinny, and then she's time bigger. And, you know, it's like Oprah's been in like reincarnated in different bodies 10 times, man. I mean, I like Oprah, so it's no disrespect. This is what she says, okay? Rick, what's up, man? One of my old friends is here. It's another good thing. If you make a little bit of money, get a little financial freedom, you can hang out with the people you like, your old friends. So yo-yo dieting is with food, but there's another nasty thing. That's what I showed you, yo-yo income, where you like go down. Like when I made 12,000 bucks, then I went down, and I was sleeping on a couch after that. Then I went back up and down, and luckily some of the things that I'm talking about now, my mentors begin to tell me, and then you pretty much go up, sometimes faster than others. You know, your income sometimes will go straight up. I've gone to making, you know, where you make an extra $1 million or something, and sometimes it's a slower growth as an entrepreneur. So I begin to think, you know what, there needs to be a new program created. You know, what do I call it? And this is one of the lessons in that program, the money program. And so a while ago, about 6 months ago, I always test the programs. So I started I think it was last fall, after I launched the 67 Steps, I started doing for those of you who are entrepreneurs, always do what's called a beta program. That's where you Joel Salatin said, when you go to Walmart, they give you a sample of the food. You've never bought it before, they want you to buy their, hamburger. They cut up the hamburger, give you a little toothpick in it and a little piece of it. Why? Because at the beginning, people don't know if it's good, and you as the person selling it, you don't know if it's good. So I began to give this out for free, this whole program, because like I said, I forgot one thing I was going to say. So if someone tells you, here's the formula, in 30 days, I'm going to show you how to make more money, it's probably a scam. Maybe not on purpose. It's probably, let me not call it a scam. It's probably an ill-conceived idea, okay? It's not thought out. So the question is, what's the minimum time it takes to learn? Because I think everybody knows you can't get rich overnight. You can't lose weight overnight. You can't even increase your income overnight. You can make a change overnight, but you can't make a lasting change. So one of the things those of you know, that's why I came up with the 67 steps. I read there's interesting research the most cutting edge research says it takes about 67, it's actually 66, but my cousin said, Tai, don't use that number. It sounds like 666. So she was superstitious about devil stuff. So I added one more day. So it's about 67 days. University College London said we used to think it took 20 days to change your brain. Because remember, everything happens in the brain. The reason people yo-yo diet, it's the brain, it's their brain. They're like eating, and that impulse comes from the brain. It's not like your arm is the one that makes you fat. It's the brain. So they said what's happened in the past is you and I grew up in an era where people were telling us, oh, you can lose weight in 30 days. Yeah, but you'll gain it back. Oh, you can figure out how to change your financial situation in 30 days. No, it's not long enough. What they found is the minimum time, okay, minimum for people around the world to change their habits, change their brain, change procrastination, stop doing the wrong thing, to create lasting change, okay? I'm not talking about where you make an extra $1,000 and then it's just a one-time event and you never make more money. 67 days. So the programs, all the stuff that we create, you know, the question is for this girl who emailed, I began to think, I'm gonna create a program. And I did this about 6 months ago, but it wasn't open to the public. And I was like, I'm gonna make a 67-day program. And this 67-day program is enough time. Now, most people take a little longer because you don't watch a video every day. So I made 67 videos. And the average person takes, 2, 3, 4 months to watch them all. They're short. They're like 15 to 20 minutes. And they lay the foundation for everything that I would tell that girl who wrote me. Because, and these are the things here. There's 3 things that you got to know basic. There's about 67 things you need to know, but I don't have time to go through it. At the end of this talk, or in a little bit, I'll give you a chance if you want to learn all 67. But I'll give you what ones I have time. I've been doing these, and some of these are taking like 4 hours. I don't have the time to do 4-hour ones all the time, so I'm trying to keep this one here not too long because I know you got other stuff to do. But for those of you, about 20% of people in the Pareto principle, it's the 80-20 rule, about 20% of you watching this are really interested and you want to learn all 67. I'll show you how to do that later. But let me show everybody the first one. I think I have time to do about 3. So the first one is going back to what I was saying. You have to create some automation level. Now, let me speak on this because there's a lot of stuff out there talking about an automated income, and most of it is BS. And the way I know it's BS is I'm fortunate enough to know a lot of people now in the entrepreneur world and a lot of people in the educational world. A lot of people know who I am now. And so I know the people writing about automated income, and I know most of them don't make that much money. Okay? So I only listen to people who make money. So with automation, this is a tricky one because you may have heard or seen things online. Automated income. It's what those people are saying is usually a bunch of BS. So a lot of those will say things like, okay, you get into real estate and you buy an apartment complex and then people start renting it from you. And then while you're sleeping, they're paying you rent. And there's some truth to that, but that's not that simple of that's not a real concise plan, and it doesn't work all the time. A lot of people lose money in real estate. Look at 2008, about 50% of America went bust, of a whole country, with real estate, because it's not about the asset class, real estate, gold, stock market, equities, bonds. It's about something else. It's called value investing. You have to understand intrinsic value versus the price. This is what Warren Buffett, I'm a shareholder in Berkshire Hathaway, and I go every year, and you might have seen, I did a picture on my Facebook that went viral. A couple million people saw it in a few days. It was me at Warren Buffett's house showing people. It's a pretty cool house he has. But automation is what will allow you to just take $11.70 an hour and turn it into a doctor's income, okay? And there's ways to do that. And like I said, that's a semi-long talk. I don't have time to do all of it, but I want you to remember that word in the good way. If you could figure some level of automation. So here's a good test if you want to know if you have automation. In all the businesses I have, and I have different types of businesses. I'm an investor in many different things, about 14 different companies and ventures right now. And my computer programmers, the people who build my websites and different businesses, they have a little set of code that they made that every hour, and not just every hour, but every time there's a sale of any business, in any product, in any business, I get an alert to this phone. So I could tell you right now, if I check my phone here, I built a special email account just to handle it. Let's just pick a random time. Remember how I said you got to make money all the time, even while you're sleeping? I'm just going to go back here. Let's say to while I was asleep. Let's just pick 4 in the morning. Sorry, 2:36 in the morning. 2:36 a.m. Made money. One sale, 2 sales. The next sale. This is a few minutes later. Another sale. Another sale. Another sale. Another sale. So in this one, and I have my businesses divided up. So this one business, let's say, made $3,000 between, and then I get a summary every hour. So one of my businesses, let's say, made $2,975 and 64 cents. I got my alert at 3:13 a.m. Now remember, I've built these over time. I'm not saying you're going to just instantly get to making $3,000 in an hour from one business like I do now. But remember what I showed you on the chart? You only need $11 an hour. Okay? If you make $3,000 24 hours a day, like the stuff that I do, you can make hundreds of millions of dollars. But that's not the goal for this call. Okay? Because if you're an advanced entrepreneur, if you're already making $5 million a year, then there's more advanced stuff. I have some programs, more advanced programs too, for those of you who are let's say you're making $1 million a year, whatever, 100,000. We have different levels, but everybody, you and I are part of the same era. I'm not special. We're in this together. We're on planet Earth right now in 2015, And the principle is, I don't care if I made $2,975.54 in that hour for this one of my businesses. I care that I made something. Back years ago, if it would have just been $11 every hour, that's $102,000 a year. You don't need as much as you think. A lot of people write me, and it's a little dangerous sometimes. I see the mentality. A kid wrote me who's 16. He's like, Tai, I want a Lamborghini Aventador as my first car. Can you show me how to do that? And my answer, I wrote him back, I was like, no. Why you need a Lamborghini Aventador at 16? You know how much insurance insurance for a 16-year-old with a $500,000 car would be $4,000 a month, $5,000 a month. Trust me, I pay a lot of car insurance. I have a good driving record, and a Lamborghini. I got 3 expensive Italian cars right now. That's a lot of money. It's thousands of bucks a month. Why would you want to do that? It'd be stupid. If I was 16 with a Lamborghini, I'd kick myself. I'd go back in time and punch myself in the face. You got to earn it, and that's later. And who cares? My life didn't get way better the day I bought my first Ferrari years ago, like 08 or something, I think. My life didn't get better. It's cool to drive Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but it's not that cool. It's not the dominant thing in my life. You want to have a good life. Health, wealth, love, happiness. You want to have the whole package, man. You don't want to just have cars. So remember with the automation, you could make if you made $3,000 an hour, okay, that's a lot more than 11. You can do the math on how much money you'd be making. In fact, if you make $3,000 an hour, you'll be in the top 0.00001% of this planet. So you don't need that. That's not important, because for those of you who know, there's this. There's the triangle, man, the pyramid. I believe in this. I talk about this all the time because I think about it all the time. Most of the world, they're in debt. This is the bottom of the, debt. That's below zero. This is not a good place to be. Then you get scarcity. This is under 75,000. So this is the inflection point, it's called. The marginal reaction inflection point. Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize as an economist, and he did research that showed you got it around 75,000 is the minimum number you want to try to get to. Okay, so if you're 16 years old, I would tell that kid, forget it, Aventador. Try to figure out how to get closer to this number. You know, it's not an exact number. It's a rough ballpark. Now, when you're 16, if your mom and dad are paying for your house, you don't need to make 75,000 because you have less debt. You might be able to make 20,000. Man, if you're 16, have no costs, and you make 20,000, you could save 19,000, and you might have to pay a little taxes. After scarcity, this is where you want to get to. FF, financial freedom. And that's 75,000 up to about, let's say 120,000. And then above this becomes prosperity. You don't need that. The only people, and then you get wealth. So prosperity is up to about $1 million. Once you start making more than $1 million, remember I was telling you about that company I toured? They're making $300 million a month or whatever, maybe a little less than that, but $100 million a month. They're up here in wealth and impact. That's where Bill Gates is. This is when, and each of you can aspire to get here, wealth here, here, but you don't want to aspire to be here. These are temporary states you want to get out of. It doesn't need to happen overnight, but you need to be making progress up this thing. If you can get to 75,000, that's when your life will change. If you're already there and you're making, let's say 100,000, you need to try to get into the prosperity zone. And what happens here, there's different benefits. Financial freedom zone, 75, and this, by the way, is for most states in the United States and more for most countries in the world. Daniel Kahneman was asked about that. Oh, is it 75,000 only if you live in New York, only if you live in Texas, or live in London? He's like, no, generally, there's some, obviously, if you live in a country that has a different type of money, like rand or Brazilian reals or yen or something, you got to translate it. But it's basically, the average person in the US makes 50,000. So it's about 50% above average. So take the average living wage for the country you live in, and 50% above it. So if you live in a country where the average person makes 25,000, you need to make about 37,000. That's half of 50% more. Okay? But 75,000, Daniel Kahneman, this Nobel Prize winning guy, said that's a damn good number. Okay? So these are the three zones you want to move towards. And automation is one of the big tools. It is not the only tool, by the way. That's the other thing to be careful of. So people abuse the word automation, and they also abuse single tools. There's an old saying Charlie Munger says, the billionaire. He says, to the man with a hammer who only has a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. You will not solve all of your financial problems by automation. So I want you to think about your life like this. Oh, can you give me a new board here? So I want you to think about your life like this. You have a big tool belt on, okay? If you've ever been on a construction site, people have tool belts. So when you have the tool belt, you walk on to build a house, and let's say your income is a house. You see a nail in a board, okay? You're gonna reach for the hammer. But if all you have is a hammer and there's a screw, what happens if you hit a screw with a hammer? It breaks the screw. It strips the threads of the screw. So I want you to be, this is you. I want you to have a big tool belt on, and I want you to have multiple tools in your belt. Okay? I don't want you to just have a hammer. You need a screwdriver, you need a hammer, you need a wrench, you need a tape measure, you need a level, all those things, okay? It's the same with this formula we've been talking about today, what I call the 67-day money program. So I built this program because I'm like, I'm gonna give people 67 tools in the belt. And with 67, you could start changing your life. if you're willing to not do it in 3 days, if you're willing to stick to it. And the reason I say only about 20% of people in this call are eligible to be in this program, in my experience, because we have an application and not everybody gets in, it's because a lot of people can't stick to something for 67 days. It's impossible. It's not hard to stick something for 67 days. If you give somebody video games, or I've been watching Game of Thrones, if they make 67 episodes of Game of Thrones, people have no problem watching. People will sit there. I remember when Sopranos came out. I don't watch a lot of TV, but good TV I like. I watched, is this for me? I watched The Sopranos, man. You could watch 67 episodes. How many episodes were there? How many seasons? There went 7 seasons? What the heck? I think it went 7 seasons, what, times 12, right? Okay. Nobody knows anything about The Sopranos? Do we not have anybody here who knows The Sopranos? No, I got to get this off. I'm live on camera. I can't get a water bottle off. Okay, here we go. So, people can stick to stuff forever. American Idol went like 14 seasons and people watch every episode. People have no problem sticking to stuff that's entertaining, but people have a hard time sticking to stuff that's good for them, like their life. This money thing, stick to it. It's not that long. It's 2.5 months. One problem with the generation and the era that you and I are in, and I'm guilty of it and you are guilty of it, we are not as tough as the generation before. Trust me, I was just down with my grandma. She's 97. She said when I was growing up, we ate carrot soup, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All we had for food was carrots. She said your skin will start to turn orange. But my grandma survived. My grandma got on a boat and left Germany. She met Adolf Hitler when she was a little girl. She went to her friend was in the Nazi youth. My grandma didn't know anything about the Nazis. Her friend became a Nazi youth, said, hey, Marianne, you should come see. She actually wrote a book. The New Yorker magazine just wrote about my grandma a couple years ago. Melita Meshman wrote a book, and she put, this is to my grandma, to Marianne, in the cover of the book. And my grandma went to this little speech that Adolf Hitler gave in somebody's house, and she was tough. My grandma was like, this guy's crazy, and she got on a boat that very same month and left. No family came with her. She left behind her mom, dad. She was a 21-year-old girl. She came and landed at Ellis Island in New York City. Hardly any money, hardly any English. Knew one person that she had, a family by mail, had said, we'll help you out. My grandma survived. She's tough. Now people complain. I have a friend. This is how weak you and I have become in this era. I have a friend, I said, you want to come to London? I was speaking in London. He's like, oh man, the flight over there. I was thinking, dude, we leave LAX. It's an 11-hour nonstop flight. You watch a few movies, you read a few books, you take a nap, you wake up on another continent. My grandma had to take a train from Germany. Then she had to get on a boat to England, across the channel. And she had to take a boat to New York. That's a long trip. And no email, hardly any phones. She couldn't get through. She didn't see her mom again for 8 years. People are weak. They'll be like, I don't know if I can leave my family for 3 days. I'm like, your kids will be okay. 3 days or a week. This is 8 years. So what I want to caution you is this tools in your tool belt is not for everybody. Most people are average. Most people, Henry Thoreau said a very interesting quote before he died. He said, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. Desperation. With money, most people just give up. So I want to challenge some of you, the 20% that are tough, get all the tools. So what's another tool? Automation. And like I said, that's a long conversation. So that's an hour or two conversation. I'm not going to do that completely here. I'll take some questions later. The second one is, so automation is one tool. What's the second one? And number two, you have to get people working with you. Now, if you've ever seen Tom Sawyer, and this is one most entrepreneurs and most people doing stuff get completely wrong. In the United States, there's millions of people trying to make money. Millions. And the average, what the government classifies in the tax code as, they call them, forget the word here, give me a second. Anyway, it's single member businesses, one employee. Oh, non-employers, that's what they're called, non-employer entrepreneurs. So they don't employ anyone else. They do it all themselves, okay? That's the majority of people in the US trying to do stuff are trying to do it alone. And I just read this literally a couple months ago. The average one of them makes $42,000 a year. So people, if you're going to try to do it alone, statistically, you're going to make, and you know what's bad about this number, 42,000? The average person who works for somebody makes 52,000. That means the average person trying to do big things alone only makes 42 grand less. They should quit their job, quit their solo enterprise as an entrepreneur and go work for somebody else. It's better. So you have to find people. Bill Gates said, I never did anything alone. But I want to tell you, you're going to need tools in your tool belt to do that. It's not as easy. Have you ever tried to just work with people? Most people fail. You have to learn persuasion tools. You have to learn management tools. You have to learn inspirational tools. You have to learn organizational tools. So when I was building this program out for people like that girl who wrote in, I'm like, let's build the tools for automation. What are all the different tools you need to create automated business? Then, how do you create tools that help you find people and inspire them to work for you? One of the great stories in literature is when Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn or whatever, he was painting a fence, okay? So he's painting the fence, then he realizes that he's not going to finish it or whatever. So he starts inspiring all the people, and he did it a little by tricking them. You don't want to do it this way. He basically went, oh, this is so fun. And then kids came up to him and were like, can we try it? And he's like, no, you're not allowed to paint the fence. So then kids really wanted to do it. And they're like, no, 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 we want to do it. And the next thing you know, he's like, all right, I'll let you do it. And he had 10 kids paint the whole fence for him. Now, again, that's by trickery. You don't want to do that because Sam Walton, for example, he learned this. If you read his book, Made in America, he gives an exact formula, the 10 things he learned. And he died basically the richest man of our era. He had $160 billion. That's more than Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, all combined. And what he said was, you have to build a team and reward the team. So when Sam Walton built Walmart, he inspired people to work with him. He had managers of each store who owned a percentage of the store. So guess what? It was a win-win situation. Sam Walton owned all the Walmart stores, so his life was winning if that manager did a good job. But he was fair to the manager. He said, you make this Walmart the best Walmart out here, I'm going to make you rich, or I'm going to make you a lot of money. And he did. So that's a tool. How do you build incentive-based programs? How do you do stock options? Now, some of you aren't necessarily going to become entrepreneurs. The principle's still the same. Even if you work for somebody else, you don't want to just be a low-level person if you're working for someone else. You want to be a manager. You want to be at a supervisor level. You want to be at an executive C-suite is what it's called level. And to do that, this is a huge skill. How do you automate to make money 24/7? All the big companies, all the money makers are doing this. You think Richard Branson only makes money from 8 to 5? You think Bill Gates only makes money from 8 to 5? Because if you have a job like the girl making $11.70, you only make money 9 to 5. And that's okay if it's temporary. But you got to start making a plan and a strategy to get beyond that. And then the second part, and you know, it's funny, as an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur really since I was 19 years old. And this second one, a lot of times I made the mistake too. I was like, I'm going to do it all on my own. And you do it the hard way. And you work 18 hours a day and you're trying to build your business. But then you realize, no, you got to have people working with you. I wish I had read Sam Walton's book a long time ago. I wish I had read, Bill Gates said I never did anything alone. He always had business partners. He always had a team around him. He had Steve Ballmer. He had Paul Allen. The story over and over. Sam Walton had a team. You have to become a master of people. There's that famous book and famous course by Dale Carnegie. How do you win friends and influence people? That's one of the tools. See, some of the tools that I put in this program are about building automation of businesses. Some of them are this other one, social skills, specifically, but income social skills. So how do you build income using social skills? You can't just, social skills you need for lots of things. You need it for dating, you need it for friendship, but you also need it for income. All right? And then, so the third thing, and then I'm going to answer lots of questions. There's a million questions. You have to change a mentality. The third one here, which is massive, you have to pick the right industry to be in. And, some people are going to tell you it's gold. That's the one. Some people are going to tell you it's real estate. Some people are going to tell you it's technology, like make an app like Snapchat. Some people, what are the things you guys have heard? Some people are going to tell you it's an energy business. Some people are going to try to make it an entertainment business. Some people are going to make it, I guess music is in there. Some people want to make it as an artist. You can see the list goes on and on. But you want to know what's the best odds of getting what you want financially? Well, you don't have to take my word for it. Go to the Forbes list online. The richest people in the world. They list out their name, what they do, how much money they have. But pay attention. Most people only look at the column how much money they have. What you want to do is pay attention to the column of how they got the money. So you want to remove everybody who inherited their money because that's not something you have any control of. Then you look at the people and you know what you're going to find? It's all over the place. But one category makes the most money. One and one alone. And Will Durant predicted this 50 years ago. He said the men who manage men manage the men who only manage things. But the men who manage money manage all. What he was saying is there's a hierarchy in the world. Things. Right now, if you're just flipping burgers or you just have a low-level job at a company, you're just at the lowest level. The second one, people who know how to manage other people. Like I said on the page before, you got to know this. So you'll have a step up. A manager always makes more than the employee because he's managing people. But there's one that's the highest. And you'll see this on the Forbes list for yourself. The people who manage money. So the richest people in the world, statistically, on the Forbes list, about 77 of the self-made billionaires in the world, they are in a special category. What do you call people who manage money? You call them investors. So this is the word that if you want to be part of the generation, the era that I believe you and I are part of, you might not have realized it, I didn't realize it, you want to be part of the investor mentality. Remember, you might be in energy, you might be in entertainment, you might be in real estate, you might be in art, you might be in gold, but you see yourself as an investor, and investors are different than everybody else. So you can be in the energy business and not see yourself as an investor. You could be in the sports business and see yourself as a sports person. You could see yourself as an entertainer, an actor, a musician. No, you don't want to be a musician. You want to be a musician second, an investor first. Now, what does that mean? It's just a mindset change. I'm not saying you should, if you love music and you're a great musician, you're going to be the next, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, whoever you're going to be, some big musician. You want to go into it with the mentality of an investor, because here's the tool in your tool belt. You know what are different about investors? And this is what almost nobody does right. Investors, investors spend themselves rich. That's the difference. Investors spend money, but this is how they spend money. The new mentality for you. The average person spends money like this. They go, what am I going to get in the short term? And we know in the human brain, the way the human brain works, You have the brain stem. The back of your brain is your brain stem. The middle of your brain is the amygdala, okay? And the front is the neocortex, the prefrontal median cortex, they call it. So back here is the part that gets you in trouble. It's the part when you see donuts and cookies and candy, you eat it, even though the logical front part tells you you shouldn't. The middle part of you is the fear-based part. So it can also get you in trouble. Sometimes fear is good. You hear a loud noise, you jump out of the way, you don't get hit by a bus. And same with the primitive part, your brain stem part of your brain. The brain stem, you know, protects you. It's the things, it keeps you breathing, like your autonomic system when you're sleeping. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to use logic to, when the water's hot, to pull your hand back, okay? The amygdala, you learn trauma. You know, you learn that if you go up to a stranger and you know, smack them in the face, they might punch you back. That creates the trauma memories. And some trauma is good, most of it's not good, but what happens is the money that you have made and will make in your life will be probably controlled like by the back. So your mom and dad, if they made $50,000 a year, they've already become millionaires, they just didn't keep the money. The average person makes $50,000 times 30 years working. What is that? 1.5 million bucks. You've been surrounded by millionaires your whole life. It's just they didn't have the investor mentality, so they didn't keep the money. Spend themselves rich. So if you look at what you spent money on last month, just take it. Go in your bank account. Look what you spent money. Did it make you rich or somebody else rich? Because the rule of an investor is spending creates riches, but just not for you always. Your mom, dad made $50,000 a year. I don't think my mom made quite that when I was a single mom, but even if you make $30,000 a year times 30 years, it's still about $1 million. Where did it all go? I know where it went. It went to make somebody else rich. You pay your rent, made the landlord rich. This is nasty cycle, nasty. You're just making other people rich. You buy food, you make the, you know, Tyson chicken rich or Taco Bell. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do these things. You have to do these things. But an investor sets aside money, always. The average person, this is them. They're smiling. Oops, they're looking that way. Back here, the brain stem, they're controlled by that. Louis Vuitton puts out a new purse, they gotta buy it. You know, someone puts out a new flat screen TV, they have to get it. Marketing controls them. I'm not saying you should never buy a flat screen. I'm not saying you should never buy a Louis Vuitton, but you know what investors do? They know how to, what's called siloing. S-I-L-O-I-N-G. You have to know how to silo your money. So some money goes to these things that make other people rich but give you a short-term benefit. Your rent is a very short-term benefit. All the money you've spent on rent made the landlord rich, but you have nothing to show for it. It only helped you the day you were sleeping there. Last month's rent is pointless to you. It's useless to you. But you know what Warren Buffett does with his money? Back in I forget what year, he bought, with his money, a whole bunch of Coca-Cola stock. He's the largest shareholder of Coca-Cola. So he spent money then, and guess what? Every day he wakes up a little richer. It's not like rent. You put money in rent, it's all gone. I call that, by the way, phantom money or phantom spending. Don't do too much phantom spending. Your mom and dad, your grandpa, your uncle, they made $50,000 times 30 years. They made probably $1.5 million. It was phantom spending, meaning it's all gone, man. It's all gone. You got to spend stuff on stuff that goes up. No RRD spending, or not too much. Rust, rot, and depreciate. So one of the things, the tools in your tool belt here is how do you do the siloing? How do you compartmentalize? What percent should go to daily expenses? What percent should go to future money-making enterprises? You must know this. And that's another tool in the tool belt. Spend yourself rich. And I'm going to just give you one clue here. And One of the sad things about life is things that are too true, that's what I call them, too true, people ignore because they think they sound too simple. So like Sam Walton, he wrote that book. It's just a little book. He wrote it on his deathbed. He had cancer. And it has 10 simple tools for him to grow a big business. And they're so simple that if I told you them, you would be like, what? Like one of them is the customer's always right. He's the guy who came up with that phrase. People go, oh, of course, everybody knows that. No, but do you really know it? Because a lot of people know the stuff that I'm talking about. And I always say there's two kinds of people in the world when it comes to money. There's knowers, and there's people who are masters of the skill. Which one are you? It's funny, I posted a thing yesterday on Instagram, and I was like, how come everything you need to know in life you didn't learn in school? Like stock market, multiple languages, how to build your own house if you want to, but how to do public speaking well, what personality type you are, how to persuade people, how to build a business. And somebody wrote in the comments, said, oh, I already know those things. And I was thinking, yeah, because you're a knower, dude. I know. You know what knowers have in life? Nothing but an ego. That's all that kid had that wrote me. I know because I looked at his Instagram. I was like, okay, this kid knows a lot. People who know, look, Warren Buffett knows about the stock market, but he's also a master. And you know the difference when you cross over from there? Well, this guy has about $70,000 million in his bank account. He keeps $20 billion in cash. He says he keeps that much in his business, Berkshire Hathaway, so he can sleep good at night. This knower person, you know what their bank account looks like? Just a big fat zero and a big ego. Don't be a knower. You got to be a master. You have to have mastery of the tools in the tool belt. So, automation, you might know it, but are you a master? How much money did you make last night at 2:04 in the morning? If the answer is none, then you ain't a master, my friend. You're over here. So don't, I get mad sometimes. I'm like, don't start. Knowers are annoying people. I was watching The Office, which I think is a hilarious show, especially season 6. Some of the seasons aren't funny. But Oscar, the guy who's the accountant, the Spanish accountant guy, they call him, I forget the word, the actually guy. Because whenever somebody says something, he corrects them. Like, oh, well, actually, China has 1.3 billion people, not 1.2. Those are the most annoying people on the planet. You ever been around a know-it-all? A knower? Please. Knowers don't do big things in life. So if you know about the stock market, do you know the difference between a debenture? Do you know what tranches are? See, you don't know about the stock market. Do you know what collateralized mortgage obligations are? CMOs? And if you tell me yes, do you know the dictionary definition, or do you know what that really could mean for your life? Because, for example, right now, I'm building a new company, and it's an investment company, and we're using tranches. Using debentures put into multiple tranches. Now, you might say, Tai, I don't even know what you're talking about. I didn't go to college. I dropped out of college. I have 8 credit hours, I think 10 credit hours. So I didn't learn this in college. I'm not a know-it-all either. I'm using it. Knowledge that's not used puts you in that category. Knowledge that's used puts you in the master category. Now, I'm not a master of everything. I'm working with lawyers. They know more than me. But you know what? They didn't have the idea. I did, and I asked them to do it. And I'll tell you this. If I didn't know that, I'd probably have about 20 million. I figure if we do this right, you can make an extra $20 million in a year in terms of raising capital for a new venture. You got to know stuff, and it has to cross over from knowing into knowing it at a mastery level. And then all the rewards start coming to you. Warren Buffett keeps $20 billion in cash, There's a lot of rewards from having $20,000 million in a bank account in cash. You don't even need that much. What if you had an extra, there's a kid that got in this program, not a kid, a guy who got in the program. He just emailed me last week. He said, Tai, he was one of the people that got in the money program back last year when it was in beta. So I don't know what he paid. It was less money back then. It was still in the beta. And he said, Tai, I should read it. I don't know where. He said, I have an extra $200,000 in my bank account because of the things that I learned in the last 6 months. Another guy in the program, he's like, I closed he's in sales. I closed an $8.3 million deal. Now, he was just an employee there, but he said my commission was an extra $10,000. He said I got in the program and 2 days later, for the tools that I learned, I made an extra $10,000. Now, not everybody has those results, but I see those so much that I have to have a team keeping track of testimonials in my company. Not because I'm so great, it's because knowledge at the mastery level is what you should invest in. It's that simple. Mark my words. I get so many, I buy now, if you write me on Instagram or email me, I can't unfortunately answer all of them. I literally now probably get a couple thousand a day, but I do read the ones specifically where people give me a book recommendation. I buy every book. If you can pan over there to my kitchen table, can you pan to that? If not, but that kitchen table, oh, you can see over here. Can you see that? If I stand over here? This one right here, that's new books. Those piles, those are new books that just came in the last 24 hours. It's not me being a know-it-all. It's the opposite. Those people who wrote that book, they're masters. I want to learn from masters. I will spend, I buy those books. You recommend a book, I buy it without, a lot of people read the reviews of every book. I'm like, forget that. I don't have time for it. I buy 10, 20 books a day. Because why? $1 spent on this makes me back $10. That's how an investor thinks. So the last thing, you have to be an investor. If you don't know this term, and a lot of people know the term, but if I ask you to calculate it, they don't know how to do it. You know how to calculate ROI? There's also, sometimes it's called IRR, if you're in the hedge fund world, internal rate of return, return on investment. You might know that term, but do you really have mastery level? Because sometimes people, like I gave this big talk in Cancun, and I kind of challenged people. It was about 200-300 entrepreneurs. I was there 2 weeks ago, and I gave a talk, and I kind of challenged them. All you guys want to have money, but do you have level of mastery? I can ask you 3 questions, and I can stump everybody in this in this whole audience. And people, right when I got off stage, 40 people come up. They're like, oh, ask me the question. And when I do, nobody can answer it. But it's not that hard. If I don't like to embarrass people, but if I gave you a number, could you calculate ROI? And what is ROI at its basic level? You spend and you get a return. And everything you do should be like that. You remember that caret symbol? That means the spend has to be less than the return. If you're a value investor, they call that intrinsic value versus price. Intrinsic value is the return. The spend is the price. You want to know how to invest in real estate? You want to know how to invest in gold? I can tell you the answer right now. I can give you the knowledge. Mastery will take you a little time. Always, if possible, know how to calculate intrinsic value and make sure it's less than the price. And if you want to get real sophisticated, you can do what's called the time value of money, discounting. But that's for another conversation. That's not for this one. So I want to ask you real fast, quick test to see how good you are at this. What were your 3 biggest expenses last month? If I magically could go onto your bank account or you could go into mine, what would we see? So 3 biggest ones. Anyone want to throw out here in the audience? Jonas. Basic expense.
Food.
Okay, food. So here we go. We have the price, or let's call it the cost, and we have the return. All right. So cost, return. Now, we're going to have short-term and long-term returns. So cost, let's say your expense, Jonas, was how much you spent on food, would you guess? A month. Let's say $500. Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask you for the long term, because investors don't just think about today, long term. What's the long-term return? Last month was May. So May, $500. May 2015 cost, or you could call this the investment, was $515. $500. Okay. Long term, let's just take 1 year from now. May 2016, tell me the long-term return from that cost. Zero. So you know what that is? That ain't an investment, that's a necessity. And necessities don't get you rich. Investments make you rich. So, okay, not to embarrass you, Jonas. Thank you for your honesty. Somebody else. Just the biggest expense you had. Rent. Okay. Do you mind sharing what your rent is?
Just by myself, it was like 550, 600.
Okay. So you have a roommate?
Yeah.
Okay. So rent was 600, let's say. May 2016, what's going to be the long-term payoff? Zero. Now, I want to actually show you something. This is the nasty part of this. It's actually not true. There is a return. Because I didn't ask you if what your return was. Do you rent from a private person or a apartment building?
Apartment building.
So let's say here in California, a big apartment building is Oakwood Apartments, okay? So let's pretend you're in Oakwood. So for you, it was zero. Guess what it was for Oakwood Apartments? So if they can take your money, and let's say a company, they're having good return on their investment, 15%, okay? So 15% would be roughly $75. So they have a return on their investment, on your money, of $75. And of course, that can compound and get exponentially into, at 15%, they'll be doubling their money. 15% is called the rule 72. Divide 15 into 72. So it's roughly, 4, maybe 5. That means every 5 years, their Oakwood Apartments is doubling your money. So 600, 1,200. Now they've got some cost of maintaining the apartment. They've got costs of the loan that they might have taken out with the bank. Doesn't matter. If they're making 15% ROI, they're doubling their money every 4 years off you. So you 75, Oakwood Apartments. You 0, Oakwood Apartments, doubling their money every 4 years. Food is a big business. That was one of the first businesses I was in. At 19 years old, I got in the food business with Joel Salatin doing grass-fed organic beef. And it's huge money. Trillions of dollars are in that industry. So Tyson, some of these big companies, they just control the food industry. So you 0, I guarantee you, if you look at, it's called vertically integrated companies. So Tyson is a vertically integrated company. They make money all over the place on the packaging from the farmer. There's lots of ways. So let's say they're doing 10%. That means every 7 years they're doubling the $500. All this wealth is being created for the investors. But since you guys are learning and not yet in mastery zone, you're just creating wealth for other people. Now you got to buy food, you got to pay rent, but it's necessity. You're just living at the basic level. You got to get out of that. And if you're watching this and you're part of the era of time that I'm part of, me and you are all guilty of this. And the big changes in my life were when I began to get those tools that are in the money program and, how to invest, how to create automated income, what to invest in, what you should do with your life, how to manage people, how to build a team around you so you're not doing everything, how to get paid at 2 a.m. in the morning as well as 2 p.m., how to take $11 an hour and make it a doctor's income. So I'm going to keep taking questions because I want to take time with questions, but I want to do one thing. For those of you interested in the program, I'm going to put up a button here if you are interested in being in and learning the 67 tools, okay, for the money program. Now, some of you are a little more advanced. You want to learn how to be an entrepreneur, or you want to learn, marketing, the high levels. The way it works is I got an application here. And after this, by the way, for all of you who stay, like I said, I want to answer your questions live and all that stuff as kind of a reward, because some people, a lot of people aren't tough enough to stay on a call that goes over an hour or over 15 minutes, but you are if you're here watching. So the way it works with this program, where I teach all these principles, that's 67 videos, is there's 3 programs. There's the money program. Everybody who's interested should get in that. There's an entrepreneur program. Each of these have 67 videos in them, okay? They're short though. You can watch them on your phone, you can watch them on your computer. They have audio download. You can be on the treadmill, you can be jogging, you can be in the car, you can listen to them. You're not having to spend, it's not like a college degree where you have to go to school, and it's not as hard, okay? But you gotta stick with it. You gotta listen. I tell people, try to listen to 4 or 5 a week. So 15 minutes a day. You know how Warren Buffett made a commercial? He owns Geico, by the way. And it says 15 minutes can save you 15% on your auto insurance. It's the same thing like this. Spend 15 minutes a day learning all these tools on money. You'll never have what you don't understand. So there's a money program, entrepreneur, and then there's the persuasion marketing one. So everybody should be in this. This is the key program. And if you're a little more advanced, you can be in the entrepreneur program. If you're even more advanced and you want to learn all those tools, this is more for people wanting to get at the $1 million level. 70% of people who become billionaires and high income, they know about sales, marketing, and so on. So that's the 3 courses. This is the most important. So the way to get in, if you're interested in getting in, is very simple. There's an application. And I do the application because I tried it without an application. I put up a little link on my website and 7,000 people applied. And it was just like, I'm not even looking for 7,000 people to try to get into this program. I like that movie 300. Give me 300 people that I can graduate at a time. And that's enough to change the world. That's enough to spark this movement that I think you and I are already in it. We just didn't know. My grandma couldn't have done this. There was no internet. She was fleeing a war zone that ended up affecting 250 million people were displaced, killed. That's not the world we live in. We live in a time of peace, of prosperity. So it's just the mentality hasn't caught up. And so I don't necessarily need 7,000 people at a time applying for this. It's not what my vision for this is. And I tried a free application. That's when it gets even worse. So what we decided to do is put an application deposit, not a fee. So it's a fully refundable one. I believe everything I do, I back up with a I have the most generous refund policy on the planet of any business. Basically, if someone doesn't like stuff, we refund the money. So there's never a risk. A lot of people remember I said the second part of your brain, the amygdala? People are they're scared of ghosts that don't even exist. I had somebody say, I'll never buy anything online. A friend of mine told me that. I said, why don't you buy that on Amazon? He's like, no, your credit card could get stolen. I said, but credit cards are backed up by Visa, MasterCard. Visa, MasterCard will give you your money back even if Amazon won't. He said, well, what about if someone steals my card? I said, yeah, but we were at a coffee shop. I said, most cards get stolen by waitresses taking your card, swiping it under the table. I said, Amazon has a 256-bit SSL encrypted credit card page, just like all my websites do. I'm like, I told him, stop being afraid of ghosts, man. You should be afraid of paying cash for stuff. One time, I bought some tickets to something on Craigslist, and I had to PayPal the guy $1,000. Guess what? No, not PayPal. I had to. We gave him cash. And then he gave us the tickets, and they were like reprinted out. So when we went to the gate and they swiped them, they're like, these tickets have already been used. What do you do when you pay cash? Nothing. I couldn't do anything. So cash is what people are afraid of. And then they're afraid of, what if I get into a program and it's not worth it? I'm like, well, does it have a refund program? I learned that, by the way, from Sam Walton at Walmart. Walmart refunds you all your money, and you don't even need the receipt. at Walmart. I thought that was interesting. I was like, that's a very ethical business. You buy something at Walmart or Target or whatever, and now most companies have adopted that. And they go, no, well, if it's not good, then we take it back. And that's the same thing with this program. So then I had to figure out how much to price the programs at. Let me give you a rule of thumb. One of the biggest tools for those of you who get in this program is how to figure out how to price what you do. Because you don't want to undersell yourself. You know, a lot of people, I had a friend going in for a job, he said, what income should I ask for? I mean, what salary should I ask for? I said, follow the 10X rule. That's what Joel Salatin taught me. The 10X rule. If you ever are asking for a raise or promotion, use the 10X rule. And here's what that rule means. If you want to make $50,000 a year at a company, make sure you make the company 10 times that, 500 grand. You'll always get, and if you want to raise at a company and you want to make 100,000, make sure you can show the manager in a clear case, because I'm here, you guys make $1 million extra. So I'd like to have 10% of that. And almost always you'll get that raise. Where you won't get a raise is where you're entitled and just go, give me money, more money because my mother loves me. Your boss doesn't care if your mom loves you. Well, his mom loves him. He wants to keep the money. So, but the 10X rule, if you want to know how to price your products, you know, I heard a talk with Steve Ballmer, the CEO or former CEO of Microsoft. And this is my crazy shake. It's a different color today. I hope that's good. He was asked what he wished he would have done different. And remember, this is one of the richest men in the world. And he said, I wish I would have been better at pricing. And my advice to every business, figure out your pricing model. So I just follow this 10X rule. Everything that I sell, like if you've been in some of the beginner courses, these are the more advanced ones. The beginner ones, a lot of you are in the 67 steps, the 67-day mentor program. That one is priced at $67 a month. Why? Because I know it's worth $670. I would pay that. I follow the golden rule. What would I feel like is a fair price? I would, knowing what's in it, I would definitely pay. If I could pay $670 for all the things that are in there to save 10 years off my life, learning the hard way, the wrong way, I would definitely pay that much. So this program, I had to think, you know, what is this program worth? What would I pay? And I would pay $1 million to know the stuff that is in here, without a doubt. If I could go back in a time machine, but you know, I'm not going to price it at $100,000 because my other goal, you don't want to be greedy and try to get the maximum amount of money. A lot of stuff's greedy. I went to a big university here to speak last year. I'm not gonna say the name because I speak at different universities and I don't want them all to hate me. This is one of the top schools in the world. I spoke at the #2 business school in the world. This is in California, is almost the best school. A kid told me his family, because I guess his dad makes enough money, they only have the tuition's $264,000 for 4-year education. And he didn't even know what I'm like, that's too much money, man. That's greedy. But nobody asked me. So I don't want to be greedy. So I figured this is worth $10,000 to be in this program here. So I just priced it at 1/10 of that. So $997. So that's the application deposit, and that's also the cost of the money program. If you want to go into some of the other higher ones, after you do your application, there'll be a little place you enter in your phone number and the time to call you, and my team will welcome you. They'll call you up whenever it's good for you, and they'll explain everything you got. And then if you have questions on these, they'll talk to you about those. There's a couple different levels in the entrepreneur and persuasion, so they'll tell you the price of that if you want to get in there, or you can just stay in the money program. Okay, about half the people are interested and half the people just do the money. And this is a one-time fee, by the way. So it's not $997 a month. Let me be clear. Some people are worried about that. And then you get lifetime access to the program. $997, one-time fee, okay? So I don't want to take this. I want to take live questions about this formula and automation and all those things, how you can do that. And so I don't want to take up too much time. So if you're interested, there's a button. There's 2 video players on the page. If you scroll down, is the button showing now? Yes. There's a button. You press the button, it takes you to the application page. Fill out quick details, put in your credit card for the deposit. Now remember, if between the time today you do the deposit and the time that you do the call, or at any time you change your mind, my team will press a button and you get all your $997 back. It's literally that way. There's no strings attached. We're not like, well, you were 1 day in the program, so you only get back $950. It's not like that. You get the whole $997 back. So there's no risk. Remember, I read this interesting book. Some of you might have been on the live call that I did, and it's a book about why some people do so well in life and most people fail. And they said most people focus on the risk of, what if I spend money on this? And there's a story of this woman who she's one of the richest people in Taiwan. She's a billionaire female, self-made. There's a lot less self-made billionaire female, so it's an interesting story. What'd she do different? And what she said, so she realized she needed to move to the United States. That's where the opportunity was for the business. I forget what business she was in. She needed to move to San Francisco. So her whole family said, it's so risky. What if you go to California and something happens to you and all? And she said, she looked at risk reverse. She said, what if I stay where I am now? And 20 years from now, I realized I missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime. Because Charlie Munger says his grandfather told him, and this is what made him a billionaire, this principle. He said, Charlie, opportunities that come to you are rare. It's a rare life that's bathed in opportunity all the way. Most people only get a few chances to make a big impact. So he said, when you see one of those, do it, and don't do it small. That's what he told Charlie Munger. So this woman understood the same principle. She realized she had a narrow window. It's not that easy to get into the US. And she took it, and she looked at risk the opposite of everybody else. You know, and I've done the same thing. I've invested millions of dollars in stuff. And most people go, Tai, why not just take the money and retire? I think about that sometimes. Could retire. But I go, but what's the risk? What if I retire and I'm on a beach? You'll get bored of that. And what if I realize, and I believe right now, I'm in an opportunity, it's once in a lifetime. This thing that I've been talking to you about, an opportunity to make money, it will not last forever. Too many people will rush into it and the economy will change. If you ask an economist, I got the book by Mankiw, the Harvard economist. He says all opportunities are always short term. The window always closes. If you don't believe me, try to start up a Facebook competitor. I dare you. Try to beat Facebook. Try to beat Instagram. Try to beat they grab the opportunity. Try to beat Google. Try to make a search engine. You see any search engines? But there was a narrow window. And Sergey Brin and Larry Page, they grabbed that opportunity. And where were you and I? I often ask, man, where were my parents? Where were my friends' parents? Reed Hastings, he saw an opportunity. He was like, people don't want to go to the video store. And you know what he did? I'm going to mail people DVDs. And he started a little company called Netflix. Netflix now, 10% of the whole internet in the United States runs through Netflix, people watching it. He's at the peak hours, 30% of all internet traffic is going through one man's site, Reed Hastings. Anybody could have done that. Is that hard of an idea? Ship? No. Try to compete with him now. Who here wants to compete with Reed Hastings and Netflix? Because those opportunities disappear. And so to get this stuff, I am telling you, and I tell people, trust me. Trust me on this. I'm telling you, I look people in the eyes. I'm like, everything that I do, if it's not good, it won't be on my website. If I'm offering it, it's because I get stories. I had a guy write me, Ben, he got in the program when it was in beta, and he always wanted to do a business. He'd been trying 10 years. He couldn't figure out how to do it. He needed investors. He got in the program it was in New York. I was in New York at the W Hotel. It was in September of last year, 2014. He got in the program. 2 months later, it was literally on Thanksgiving Day. He texted me, long text, I still have it. Tai, I want to thank you. He said, I've raised $170,000 for my business, and I have 2 investors fighting over putting $500,000. He said, the tools that you gave me in this program, the tools in the tool belt, how to build a business plan, not just a plan, but a strategy, how to get people interested, how to make friends and influence people, persuasion, how to build a team. That's what he did. He just texted me the other day, yesterday. He's at MIT hiring new people. He's got a technology and art. He's an artist and also in real estate. So he's doing this big stuff in Manhattan. You know, these are awesome stories. A kid wrote me and said, Tai, the tools I got in the program, and somebody gave me a tool. One of the tools you gave me, I used to make $2,000 a day, which is pretty good in a business, $2,000. He said, I made a bump. I was making $6,000 a day. He thinks he'll make $1 million this year. And then at the bottom of the email, he said, you know, but I'm a little insecure about my success. And he said, because I'm only 19 years old and I live in Lithuania. His name's Matt Posius. If you see him in some pictures, he flies out here every time I do a private retreat. By the way, some of you who get in the program, at the higher levels, you'll get access to a private retreat that I do, a very small group, usually 30 to 50 people maximum. Sometimes 100, depends on the retreat size. That's not for the money program, but at these higher levels. And he comes out, he flies from, and he lives in Lithuania. That's a Soviet bloc, Cold War, old country. 19 years old. There's no excuses anymore. He doesn't have a Harvard business degree. He didn't have big investors. You know what that kid, very interesting thing with that kid, he invests in knowledge all the time. He's in different masterminds, different mentor programs, not just mine. He's in another guy, Dan Pena has one. He's in Dan Pena's program, which is in Europe. He's in mine. He's always investing. Because what's the ROI of investing $997 in this? Because most people aren't tough enough. They go, well, if I put $997 in, that's a lot of money. But what about the long term? Look, those people think differently. Matt Posius. Let's take Matt Posius. I forget what he invested. He's in a few programs, but let's say $997. I think it's more than that. They actually did more. He said his income went up a couple $100,000 a year. It doesn't take a genius to get this stuff. Sometimes I wish I wouldn't have to talk about it. I feel like I don't want to talk down to people, but people don't get it. And I know why. Because all of us are controlled by the primitive brain and the amygdala fear part. And those two parts are nasty. They're important when it comes to running from lions, tigers, and bears. But they're not good at making money. That's why Warren Buffett, he uses the neocortex. Richard Branson, the neocortex. This part, they are able to go $997, turn into $200,000. Okay, that's a good deal. He'll spend $997. Warren Buffett has a rule. He said, I'll spend any amount of money if I'm gonna make a good ROI, any amount. He'll drop $10 billion in a day if it's gonna make him more than $10 billion and better than any of the other opportunities that he has. You gotta look at opportunity cost. The person who got in the program, Ben, he raised, I think, $175,000. This kid just the other day, a guy literally last week, said, I have an extra $200,000 in his bank account. Another person, it's not always dramatic results like this. One guy, I can't answer all the phone calls. We have a whole team downstairs answering the phone, but I try to answer some of them so I understand what's going on. And a guy wrote me and said he's making extra $1,000 a month. So it's not as dramatic as results here, but $1,000 a month, a good Mercedes is $400 a month. So he's making enough to have that, plus have $600 left over. You can get a nicer apartment with that. Now, again, not everybody who goes into this will get those results. And if you're one of them and you're worried about you can still go in the program because it's kind of a bad deal for me and it's good for you. If you go through the program and then at the end you don't like it, you can ask for your money back. It's a refund, open refund policy. A lot of people ask me why I do that. Tai, I have some friends, one of my friends here, they make $100 million a year. They live up in the Hollywood Hills like me. And they're like, you're crazy, man. They're like, you make a lot less money. And I'm like, I know, but it's helping people get over their fear and I'm okay with making less money. Just like for any of you who are in the monthly billing programs, this isn't monthly, but I send a reminder 5 days ahead of time, an email, and right after, and we refund it. So I don't want to bill people who don't want to pay. Don't ever build a business where you're tricking, like you're taking money from people who don't want it. It's not a sustainable business model. So the point is, investors, $9.97 as long as they get back. A good investor, $9.97 as long as they make back $1,200, they're good. That's a, almost a 20% return in a year. People are happy with that. I guarantee you that it will be worth your money, or I'll send you your money back. That's it. And we fortunately don't get many refunds because people write in and go, man, this thing's changing my life, So I'm gonna take questions now. You can ask questions below this. Below this video, there's a little area. Now, here's the deal with this button that's below. I'm only interested, like I said, I put an application and a price knowing that I get less people in the program. That's okay. This button ain't gonna be up all day. So it's up while I do the talks, and we keep it up for a few minutes after in case you wanted to listen and didn't press the button. But this fills up, and then I take it down. And by the way, some people think that when people say that it's just a bluff. It's not a bluff, okay? So just remember that. Just like I tell people, everything I do goes up in price. I do some one-on-one consulting. I used to do one-on-one consulting for 25 grand. Now I charge $1 million. It goes up. I have more skill now. 10 years ago, someone could pay me 25 grand. Now I can make people, if someone hires me to come into their business, I don't even do it anymore. That's the truth of it. I started charging 100 grand, started 250 grand. I don't like it that much. My goal is not to make the richest people in the world richer. My actual goal, I like working, and that's why I post on Instagram. That's why I post on Twitter. Like, I'm interested in people who are like me. That's why I said you and me are the same. I grew up born to a single mom. My dad was in prison when I was born. That's why I was born in Long Beach. So I didn't even know my dad until I was really 10 years old. My mom, single mom. I was raised by my grandmom, and so my goal isn't to go, oh, who's the people who can afford to pay me $1 million? Let me just work. I kind of stopped doing that. I like working with people who are just like me. It's better that way. Joel Salatin, he helped me because I reminded him of him. So he's like, okay, Joel Salatin started out with nothing. Nothing. He slept in an attic of his parents' house for 8 years so he could save up enough money to start his business. And that's like me sleeping on a couch. So let me take some questions. There's always questions. So you can ask any question that you want. You can ask questions about the program. There's always questions. By the way, if you try to do your credit card and there's some issue with it, you can email Maya. She was the one. It's just maya@tailopez.com. All right? Now, I want to take questions. What? Oh, yeah, let me give you the phone number. Some of you like to call in. What is it? 1-800 604 and you can chat on the website. There's chat on live chat, and there's also Maya, if you like, email at tailopez.com. Now, let's answer some questions. Some people should ask questions on risk. This is a big one. You got to get over fear, I'm telling you. Dear Tai, I'm in Africa and I live in Africa. Do you think the program will still be applicable in my context? Yes. This stuff works everywhere. It's not country specific. And there's opportunities in every country. I just read the story of an interesting story of an African entrepreneur. Did these programs supersede the mini MBA and entrepreneur code? Yes. What happens is those mini MBA and entrepreneur code, those were the beta program from literally over a year ago. So now the new program is that on steroids. That was kind of an intro. So if you're in those programs, when you call and you want to take the higher level, sometimes we'll give you a little discount if you already paid money. You can talk. When you do the application, here's the general rule. Do the application. There's no risk because we'll refund it tomorrow if you want, if you change your mind, if you sleep on it. So you don't have to worry about buyer's remorse. And what if, a lot of people, there's a cool rule of math. It's called optimal stopping. 38%. A mathematician named Ferguson found you should make decisions after you have 38% of the available information. or else you become what Warren Buffett calls a thumb sucker. Most people, they're always on the fence with everything. I have to deal with that when I train people. In my company is the biggest problem. People come in and they can't take action. They suck their thumb. I'm like, look, on this program, make a firm action to not do it or to do it. Don't be a fence rider. Because what happens, neuroplasticity in your brain, you start programming your brain to not be able to make good decisions. And when you need a decision in the future, you won't make it in time. 38%. Just think of my grandma. Thank God my grandma understood this. She saw Adolf Hitler. She said, in 10 minutes, I had enough information to know this guy was crazy. She had 38%, and she got on a boat, and she came to America, and most of her family died. Bombs. Her brother was shot in the war. He was a soldier. My grandma got out because she didn't suck her thumb. And that was a hard decision. That was a life-changing one. To get on a boat and never come back, see your mom, and again, she never saw her brother again. Brother got shot. She left. She never saw him. She said goodbye on a boat, and that was it. All right. I have a good idea, and I think it's a good opportunity. I believe I can make you 10% on the investment and your time. So I'm actually working on an incubator where I'll be taking in some ideas and incubating those ideas in the future. If you have an idea, one of the things, okay, so here's the deal. Ideas are good, but they're relatively cheap. And I was reading a good book by a guy named, what's his name? He's the Harvard guy. Where's my book on business? Oh, here, this guy. I'll read you what he says. William Solomon, he's a famous professor at Harvard University. And he said, oh, I opened right to it, page 44. Among the many sins committed by business plan writers is arrogance. In today's economy, few ideas are truly proprietary. So what he's saying is, every day I'd say I get about 20 to 40 emails about ideas, and those are great. What you want to do with investors, you got to get it from the idea stage to the strategy stage. And I could do a whole nother hour-long talk on that. I talk about that a lot in the program. How can you get people to invest in you? Because I've gotten people to invest in different businesses, and you can't just do it with an idea. If you sit down with somebody and just go, I got an idea, I'm going to, if you've ever seen Ali G has a funny one where he sat down with Donald Trump and said, I've got a great idea, it's going to make millions, do you want to do it? And Donald Trump's like, what is it? And Ali G goes, an ice cream glove, so that when you're eating ice cream and it drips into a little glove that has like a lip, a little gutter on it. It's hilarious. If you haven't seen it on YouTube, type in Ollie G. Donald Trump. So that was an idea. And believe it or not, Donald Trump was not interested. He was like, okay, you do that idea. And Donald Trump gets off and walks off the set. What I thought was interesting is so obviously that's a retarded idea, but here's the deal. If Ollie G had come to him and said it was further than just an idea, he said, Mr. Donald Trump, I have already sold 1,000 units and my profit margin is 30%. It's a crazy idea. I know it seems like nobody would want an ice cream glove, but I implemented a strategy. I got a team together. I built a marketing strategy. I knew how to be persuasive, win friends. I did a beta launch. I knew the 25 cognitive biases. If he had all those tools in his tool belt like I'm talking about, and he had implemented just a little bit, so you can launch businesses pre-revenue, but if he had a little revenue, Donald Trump would have paid attention. I actually have a friend who did a business deal with Donald Trump. And he said, I was at his office, and he said Donald Trump was in a bad mood. He was like on the phone yelling at people. And he said, I walked in and was like, oh no, this guy's in a bad mood. And Donald Trump said, you have 30 seconds, I'm busy. And he said, I told him in 30 seconds, not just my idea, but strategy, how it had already been implemented, and Donald Trump ended up in business with him. So you gotta go from idea to strategy. How do you rival an already existing giant like Marvel or DC Comics, for example? You have to do what I call the Mark Zuckerberg approach. So Mark Zuckerberg took on MySpace and beat them, but he did it by, it's technically, I call it the Genghis Khan approach. Sometimes that's a little strong of words because Genghis Khan is known as a guy who conquered, not everybody likes war, but what Genghis Khan did, he took power slowly from village to village. He didn't try to conquer the whole world at once. So Mark Zuckerberg just conquered his one college that he went to school at. Then second stage, you could only be on Facebook if you were in college. And then third stage, is he took on the whole United States. And now Facebook's really in the fourth stage where they're trying to go global, and they've already gone global. So now they're, in the fifth stage where they're trying to go to people who don't have internet yet. So Facebook's working on growing their business by taking on and putting satellite dishes and ability to get internet all over the world. So what is my verdict on having a business in service and teaching, for example, a dance studio? Is there a way to create automation income through, let's say, having something? Yes. Doctor and dentist, that's a service business. That you can, see, if you're a dentist, how much money do you make at 2 in the morning? 0, because you're asleep. But my friend works with a guy who has 30 dental practices underneath him, and they're making money while he's sleeping. He doesn't have to be there. So they don't make money necessarily at 2 in the morning, but he could open a dental office in London. Now there's some laws on dental offices, but then when you're sleeping at 2 in the morning here, it's 10 in the morning London, you'll be getting sales. That's why one of the things you want to do in business and automation, you have to go international. Everything I do, I make sure it can sell in at least 40 countries, because then that follows the 24-hour rule. You don't only want to do business in the time zone you live in, because then you can't make money. Remember how I showed you? $11 an hour, 8 hours a day is $20,000. $11 an hour, 24 hours a day is how much? It's $102,000. It's crazy. Should I join this if I want more money but don't have a plan or vision? Yes. So if your question is, I don't know what I'm doing and I have no idea, you really want to get in this program. And I like working with people like that because they're blank slates. They don't have preconceived notions. So it worked for both sides, because remember I was telling you I was talking to this famous model. She's got about almost 1 million Instagram followers. But we were talking. She was here. We actually filmed yesterday. And I took her in the Ferrari. She's like, I've never been in a Ferrari. She was just here for a day. And I said, we were texting before this call, and I said, you are at a crossroads. You better figure it out, and you better get out of that place, because you don't want to be in a place for more than, I would say, most of your life. Think of it this way. To not know what you're doing should not last more than 18 months in your whole prime of your life, ideally. Now, obviously, you'll have moments of regret and doubt where you need your second guess, but your prime is, let's say, 18 to 60, okay? The prime of your life, where you're gonna have the most energy and ability to do stuff. So let's say 20 to 60. You got 40 years. In that 40 years, you do not want 4 years where you didn't know what you're gonna do. Why? You don't even know if you're gonna live to 60. You wanna die not knowing what you're doing, just wandering around, or do you wanna die like Chief Tecumseh said, so live your life that the fear of death never enters your heart. When it comes your time to die, don't be like those who cry and weep and ask for a little more time to live their life over again. He said, sing your death song like a hero going home. You want to be like a hero going home. You want to have a life of purpose. So I told her, don't be in that place, because then neuroplasticity kicks in and you start getting all confused. Steven Spielberg knew he wanted to do movies at 7 years old. By 20 years old or 21, he was the youngest movie maker that did something big in history. Evan Spiegel, I think his name, started Snapchat. We're in a new, you and I and him are in a new era. There's never been billionaires under 25 before, self-made. He's the first one. Right now, that's happening right now. That window's gonna close, you mark my words, it will close. Nothing lasts forever, that's good. I'm with Amway. Is it a scam or a program that may be profitable? So multi-level programs, Amway, Herbalife, there's all kinds of them, Visalis. You can make a little bit of money. They're good starter programs. The odds of you making a lot of money are pretty low. But they might be a good return if you don't have to spend $100 to get in it. If you make $200 back, you think like an investor. Remember, everybody should think like an investor. Investors rule the world. They always have. The Rothschilds were investors, the banking family. Look at these big families now that still run the freaking world. They're investors. What do you think they do? Do you think they make apps? They might invest in apps. They might have ideas that they build automated companies around, that they build a team around. Remember I said tool number 2, you got to build a team. But at the core of it, they are investors. They are investors. Always be an investor. Steven Spielberg, what did he become? He's now a movie producer. He didn't just make the movies, he did that, and he also evolved with the investor mentality. He's produced, I think, 100 movies or something like that. He's done a huge portfolio of movies. How much is the entrepreneur program? So if you get in, do the $997 application, there's a few different levels, whether you get the retreat or not. So it's better to, there's like 6 options or something. So instead of me confuse everybody with all the options. But the good news is the $997 you put in for the deposit will also count towards that. So do the application, talk to them on the phone. I'm not trying to put anyone off. I just don't want to spend, I actually don't do any of the pricing stuff because, I don't do any of that because I found if I do that, this whole talk bogs down into prices. And then people are like, I wanted to learn stuff. So do the application, talk to them on the phone. If you don't like the thing, they'll just refund your money. It takes 3 days for most banks to get your money back. I had a question, or how or who in the gaming industry I could talk about revolutionizing gaming. I want to change the way gaming is looked at. So video games, very powerful. Most of it's not good, but it has the potential to change the world because video games are mesmerizing. What you want to do in the general approach to doing something new like that, revolutionizing, you must find out everything. I always say you should know the shoe size of your competitor. So who's your closest competitor? You should know the shoe size of the founder or the CEO of that company. You got to reverse engineer what's already working, then you build on top of that. Okay? Pablo Picasso said, good artists copy, great artists steal. Meaning you got to steal the ideas, you don't want to steal illegally the products or copyrights, but you want to steal the reverse engineer and go, that's what they did, Yes, I bought brewing coffee at Walmart, brought it home, tasted nasty. I went back to Walmart, told them I didn't like the taste, and they took it back with no receipt. Yes, see, it's an ethical business. Now, Walmart is, a lot of people don't like it because it puts other companies out of business, but at least in that area of refunds, it's very ethical. What's a good way to market your insurance business and generate leads? So if you're in sales, you got to generate leads. One of the things I talk about in the program, that is its own deal. There's about 67 tools you need to be highly persuasive. I'm actually reading a cool book right now, which has a few tools by this Harvard girl, Columbia University. No One Understands You and What to Do About It. It's not really a marketing book, but she does talk about 2 of the 25 cognitive biases, 2 or 3 of them. You need to know all 25. You need to know authority, reciprocation, social proof. You need to know urgency, scarcity. You need to know senescence bias. You got to know all to be good at marketing. Now, it sounds complicated now, but it's not as hard as you think once it's explained to you. So the basic thing, though, is you have to lead with reward. So the main reason people don't have enough leads is their marketing doesn't lead with rewards. If you just tell people the features, like this Ferrari is red and it has 4 wheels and an engine, that's not good marketing. That's feature-based marketing. Reward-based marketing is much more powerful. You go, what would your life feel like if you were driving in this Ferrari? How would people see you? How would you see yourself? What would the power be like if you press it? See, that's all the rewards. Nobody buys a Ferrari because of the color. There's red car. You can paint any car the same color as a Ferrari, but you can only get the experience and the reward from a Ferrari. So you got to market by reward. I'm interested in the Money and Persuasion program, but I have the entrepreneur code and 67 steps. You still need to apply. This is a new program. The full program is now launched. So if you're in the 67-day mentor program, the good news is you can still do that, the 67 steps. And you can just alternate. One day do that video, the other days do these, okay? Thanks for the call, Ty. Got to get back to the grind. Great. My main focus is filmmaking. Can I spend a percentage of time working on fitness and weight loss? What do you think about herbal life? Well, why not integrate those? I talk about the integrated life. There's a way to integrate filmmaking, okay? You can integrate filmmaking with fitness and weight loss. Morgan Spurlock did a movie called Supersize Me. There's been several movies, so integrate them. Don't separate your life, okay? Ty, you should categorize your favorite books, business, health, investing, self-help on your site. Yeah, I'm actually thinking of doing that. It gets a little complicated on the page, but yeah. Have I ever thought of investing in film? Yes. I actually, a couple months ago, started in that business with a guy out of the UK. So hopefully I'll be making some movies soon. All right. Oh, I got the little chat button here. I could chat with myself. Hi, Tai. My name is Caesar. I'm from Venezuela. I want to ask when I can see this presentation again. I'd missed the first hour. We don't always have replays, so because I like to do these live, I like to reward the people that could get here. If you couldn't, stay tuned for some of the other ones. Sometimes we send a replay. I'll see if we're going to on this one. What's your advice for those who would pay the $9.97 if they have it, don't have it yet? Think of how I look at Maxim Magazine. I could have bought Maxim Magazine last year. I wasn't ready for it. I lost the opportunity. So now I kick myself in the butt every day. But you know what? I use that pain to motivate myself to make sure in the future it won't happen again. So when you miss opportunities, do not say this. Oh, everything happens for a reason. I was meant to miss it. Now, you don't learn a lesson. You know, you don't want, that's like if you burn your hand on this. If your mom or dad had told you, don't put your hand on the stove, and you burn it bad, and then you go, well, I'm glad I did that because now I know. Well, you know, Richard Dawkins wrote a book, The Selfish Gene. He's one of the most famous scientists. 1 million people bought that book. And it says, trial and error is costly. In history of organisms, species, trial and error is equated with death. 70% of people who try to make money fail. So be careful with learning the hard way. I'm a student in high school and only have a small job. Do you have some tips to help me raise my income to be able to buy your program? One of the things automation, all this, when you're starting out, you want to have 2 sources of income. So you need multiple streams of income. I didn't put that in here because I wanted to cover 3 main areas, but that's another one of the tools. So I always had 2 or 3 streams of income at the beginning. So you need multiple, and people forget, even if you work 8 hours a day, you got a few hours, you got a few hours a day you could do on a Saturday or whatever. Just make a little momentum. It's called MO, M-O. That's what President Obama's campaign manager called it. They said that was why Obama won the campaign, because he always kept momentum, even if it was small. I'm living with my mom. I'm about to get $1,500. What's the best thing to take that and make an automatic income? At the beginning, invest in your own brain. Buy books, conferences, seminars, courses, trips to go visit mentors. Invest in your brain. There's nothing you can do with $1,500 that makes you a bigger bang for the buck than knowledge. Do you give ideas for people who are trying to climb out of poverty, as in they're dirt poor, they want to start a business? The same things that's in this program. You got to build a team or be a part of a team. You got to find a mentor. I talk about the law of 33%, all those things. Let's see, I'm not sure what that question is. I feel like college is slowing me down to reach financial freedom, setting out to be a worker. Here's the deal with college. If you have a focused, if Steven Spielberg, I think went to college, right? He went to USC, didn't he? Yeah.
Long Beach.
Long Beach. Oh, George Lucas went to USC. So George Lucas went to USC, and he learned a lot from going there because he was focused. He knew he wanted to be a filmmaker. Where you mess up is where millions of people are going to school, but they're going to school for art history, but they don't even like art history. It's just a major that they got randomly. If you're in school and you like it, but you don't like the programs you're in, switch majors or something. And also go slow. Why do you have, I don't understand the rule that you have to go to college in 4 years. That rule doesn't even make sense. Who made up that rule? Why not get your degree in 10 years? Who cares? Michael Jordan got his degree, Jordan got his degree later. Or was it not Jordan, Shaq, one of those guys. Go back and get it later. One of my grandpas got a PhD at 40. Is there a lesson in how to create a business idea or how to bring awareness? Yes, I talk a lot about how to create creativity. You got to learn how to be creative. A good tool to be more creative, there's a 2-step process. The first step is do a hyper brainstorm, or real fast you try to think of ideas, then put it out of your mind and sleep on it. And what happens is that triggers the 2 parts of your brain. It triggers the part of your brain that is very conscious, the front part, the logical, but when you go to sleep, it lets the other 2 parts of your brain go. So now when I have an idea, I don't ever try to come up with an idea too fast. You need some time to, I think on it logically, I'll pull out a pen and paper and then I'll be like, that's enough time. Let me rest. And then an idea just comes to me like in the shower. That's how my good ideas. So you have to do logic and emotion. Right brain, left brain. Amygdala, brainstem, neocortex, all of them working for you. You have 3 regions of the brain, basically, get them all working for you. Someone says, I'm on board, I'm 16, but how can I sell this to my mom and dad? Have them call in, we'll talk to them. I have a job that is minimum wage. Oh, and also tell them there's a refund. So if you get in the program, it's a bad deal for me if people abuse this, because think about it. You could get in the program, go through the whole thing, and then, a month into it, be like, oh, I don't like it. And you got all that for free. But that doesn't happen, so you can tell your parents that. There's no risk there. So glad you jumped into that YouTube video, Ty. I was watching a couple months ago. Love the way you run your biz. Thanks for all the nuggets. Awesome, thank you. Should I invest in a trip to meet you in person? I'm gonna do a conference. I was gonna do it this fall. I think I'm not gonna have time. I'm gonna do a big summit in the spring of next year. So that'll be a good place to meet me. By the way, some of you who get in the program, if you get in the higher levels, they'll talk to you about access to a retreat. That's a good way. What skills do you recommend young people to learn? You got to learn willpower. You have to learn to read relatively quickly. You have to learn creativity. You have to learn hard skills. You better learn about money. You got to know some of those questions that I asked. And it's as easy as reading. Someone asked Elon Musk how he was able to build SpaceX, a space company, without having a degree in aeronautical engineering, and he said, I read a lot. It's a powerful skill. In fact, it's the most correlated skill with highly successful people is reading. There's a few people that don't read, most of them do, that are successful. Ty said, couldn't pay for $9.97, your card was whatever, declined or whatever. Sometimes when you're in another country or whatever that happens, just call, chat, or email Maya at Tai Lopez. They'll take care of it. Hi, Ty, Carlos here. We met this month in Cancun. Oh, cool. What books do you recommend for understanding the psychometric personality testing? Okay, good question. I'm working on creating my own system. We're trademarking, and I'm actually opening an institute in San Diego with a scientist. And so he's going to be building out the program. In the meanwhile, I recommend use the old school program personality typing tools that are out there. There's 3 main ones that I like. There's Myers-Briggs. You can Google it, okay? The second one is the Hexaco test. That's what scientists like the most now. And there's a third, there's these books called Strength Finders. There's a few of them. Read those 3. Those are 3 good ones, in my opinion. And then I'll have mine hopefully out by the end of the year or so. At what age is it good to start saving money or start investing? Warren Buffett bought his first stock at 11 or 12. This guy, Richard, that's a mentor, he bought his first, I forget what it was. I think it was stocks or a farm or something at 13 years old. At 17 years old, he said I was making $200,000 a month. He figured out a loophole in the U.S. stock market system. This is this mentor guy that I see a couple times a year. And he said the law has changed, so now it's illegal. But back in the 1960s, when he was doing it, it was fully legal. And he said he was making so much money while he's still in high school that his parents did like an intervention, like those shows like Rehab Intervention or whatever, and they sat down because they figured that he was selling drugs. Because if you make $200,000 a month when you're at home, your parents ain't gonna believe you that you're doing it legit. So he had to pull out all the stock market. You used to get like these like teller ticket kind of trade. They're called confirmations now. These confirmations, and you had to show, no, here's how I'm making all my money. Back then you could basically, it was insider information laws, like, what's her name? Martha Stewart went to prison on an insider information. The laws changed back when he said when I was a little kid, or when I was a teenager, the law wasn't as strict. So he said I had a way where I could find out what stocks were gonna, I guess, IPO or something, and he would just kind of front run it, where he would buy it ahead of time and then resell it. And he said he made me, remember how I said every opportunity closes? That opportunity closed on him. But, then he went into other things. And so age, I read a research report that said the number one predictor of somebody's income as an entrepreneur is the age they started. So if someone starts at 92 years old, it makes sense they have worse odds than if they started at 9 years old. It is not too young to start. Are you still doing your live calls? Oh yeah, when you get in the program, you get this video curriculum, but also more importantly, twice a month, you get access to special live calls, not these free ones. One's in a small group that I'm on where you can ask me questions. So that's a huge thing. And we go through 2 books a month of the best business books. So any tips on positioning myself as a real estate agent. There's a guy wrote a book, one of the top investors in the world, one of the PayPal guys. He wrote a book called I forget the word, something. Peter Thiel is his name, Thiel. He wrote a book, he said, the way to start and position yourself is the minimum market size. So position yourself as somebody who sells duplexes, or somebody who, if you're a real estate agent, or somebody who works with super expensive house, or somebody who works only with homes valued from 100 to 150,000, or one who works as a rental real estate agent. Pick a market, and most people are afraid to do that because they go, I'm giving up opportunities. But remember what Confucius said, the man who chases 2 rabbits catches none, one at a time. What's the best single piece of advice you've been given? Learn through other people's experience, not your own mistakes. Learn from other people's mistakes so you don't have to do it. What a horrible life to only learn by your own mistakes. I mean, that's a nasty one. That's an unrecoverable one. Tell people about Carlos Slim. Yeah, he's the 2nd richest man in the world. He owns about 10% of Mexico, I read, real estate-wise, 5 to 10%. Our rental property, Section 8, a successful method for creating automation. Remember, it's not the asset class that makes you automation or wealthy. So that's a mistake, people. They go, this asset class. The asset class that works the best is the one you are the best at. You can be filthy rich selling cameras. You can be filthy rich selling snack bars. I just read the story of the guy who started Kind, those Kind health bars. I don't know if you've seen those. He made, I think it's a multi-billion-dollar company. He liked that. Granola bars, basically. The guy who did Giovanni yogurt, the Greek yogurt, he became a billionaire. Michael Jordan, now a billionaire by owning a sports team. Sarah Blakely made Spanx tights for women. Yves Saint Laurent made a fashion brand. Steven Spielberg made movies. There's no correlation really except what I told you, investors. The people with the investor mentality trump everybody. How to effectively attack my debt. So here's the deal. I gave you that pyramid. Here's the thing. You have to understand money. It's almost like a magical principle. If you don't understand, you won't have. So think of it this way. If you understand equals having, if you do it right. But don't understand equals don't have. So think of it this way. You were born on a desert island. You get dropped in the middle of New York City. You're a guy or a girl or whatever, and you've never seen somebody beside yourself. How good at social skills do you think you'd have? Horrible. So do you think you'd be good at dating? No. Good at marriage? No. Because you know nothing about it, therefore you'll be horrible at it. Let's say your goal is to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Muscles. His Terminator movie's coming out. What are the odds that Arnold Schwarzenegger never learned anything about muscles, never learned anything about nutrition, never learned anything about reps and sets, never learned anything, and just magically started, whenever he walked somewhere, he's like, oh, I'm carrying a backpack. Let me just go and all of a sudden muscles popped in. No, the guy knows everything about muscles, and so he has them. So when you don't have money, what's another word for debt? It's not having money. It's because you don't understand it. Very, very few people on this planet who really understand money are in a bad financial state. It almost always comes from people who are just ignorant. And like I said, you can test yourself. If you wanted to test somebody, let's say you had a soccer team, football team, and you were testing coaches to hire, who would you hire? Would you hire a coach that had never heard of what a goalie was? If you ask coaches, all right, what does a goalie do? And one of the coach goes, what does goalie mean? If he didn't even know the dictionary definition, that means he's a moron and you throw him out. So that's why I use a simple litmus test. I ask people questions. Let's see if you know about money. Like I said, do you know what a tranche is? Doesn't mean you have to use a tranche. Do you know what a collateralized mortgage obligation was? Those are the ones, by the way, that got America in trouble in 2008. If you want to know what basically brought down the whole economic system, it wasn't the Illuminati. It was not the Rothschilds. It wasn't the President of the United States. It wasn't 9/11. It wasn't a random economic recession. It was these collateralized mortgage obligations. They made a very sophisticated way of packaging up your home mortgage. And it got so complicated, nobody knew what was going on. They got mispriced, and it created tremendous risk, and it took down basically the entire global economy. But you know what? My mentors had taught me about real estate, some basic tools in my tool belt. I didn't lose any money in 2008. 2008, I made more money than 2007. Right after the recession, my income went up, not down. It didn't matter, because once you understand the base, and you didn't have to be a PhD, you just need to understand the base. I told you guys, intrinsic value versus price. I understood that. So real estate, I didn't lose $1 million or anything. So lots of people, when I was living, used to have a place in Miami, and I was down there was people jumping out of windows committing suicide who had bought all these condos in 2000, that was like 2009. Don't be like those people. Those people didn't know what they were doing. They were just following other people. So if you're in debt, first step, knowledge about money. That will solve, and then you got to act, remember? Idea, strategy, execution. You got to have, idea is another word for knowing stuff. Got to have ideas. All right, I'm going to take 3 more questions. Then we're going to wrap up. Tips for starting an e-commerce store. Okay, e-commerce store. Don't go too broad. It's hard to do unless you really know a lot. You know, Sam Walton has the ultimate e-commerce, not e-commerce, but the ultimate commerce business. And what he did was he mentored under J.C. Penney, the guy who started J.C. Penney back in 1945. And then he slowly built and learned a lot. Sam Walton's very knowledgeable. So you really got to know the intricacies. I would recommend learning the intricacies of one small thing. I did a conference at the Roosevelt Hotel in January, and there was a guy there, and he was making, I did a contest for who, like an investor, I was going to invest in this people, whoever had the best idea or something. And he was selling neon signs on eBay, and he was making like $200,000 to $400,000. Maybe it wasn't on eBay. Somehow he's selling signs. Can't remember if he wanted to get into neon signs. I think he was selling clocks or something. He just had one thing, and he was making about $200,000 to $400,000 a year. So you don't have to don't try to compete with Amazon to start. Remember the Genghis Khan, Mark Zuckerberg rule. The past 12 months, I've spent like $4,000 on food. Yes, $4,000 on food. You got short-term return, no long-term return. Should I stop trying to form my nonprofit and focus on for-profit business? Well, no, not necessarily. If your business destiny is to do a nonprofit, you should do that. The shortest way between 2 points is straight line. So if you've really mapped out a strategy and you believe you should have a nonprofit, don't go over here and then try to come back later. That's one of the things I wish someone had told me at 18. For sure. Go straight for whatever you want. It works better. Your life is short, so if your life is, if to get from here to here, you go like this, it takes too long. Just go straight at it. Now, as you're going, you might realize that the target wasn't right, but then you adjust. Go straight to what you want. Do you believe there's a morning daily routine of a successful person? Yes. Do the important stuff first in your day. That is the routine. So if you are in the fitness business and most important thing in your business is making sales calls, don't put them off to 4 in the afternoon. And the reason, there's a good book here called Willpower. Scientists now know, using things like an fMRI machine, functional MRI machine, how oxygen is displaced all around your brain, that your brain runs out of sugar, glucose, and you need glucose, so your willpower is way down. For example, this is funny. People are more racist when they're tired. I just read that yesterday. It's actually in this book, this Harvard book, this Columbia University. People are more, so you want to even meet people when let's say you're worried that this person's not going to like you. You're doing an interview, you're meeting with investors, and they're like, oh, I'll meet you at the end of the day. I got to hope. Be like, no, let's meet when you have time early. You want, especially if you think they might already have a negative preconceived notion about you. Like that Ollie G thing with Donald Trump, I think that was at the end of the day because Donald Trump looked pretty grumpy. So find people when you're your peak, do the hard stuff. What I do is I reward myself at the end of the day, all the stuff that is fun and easy, save that for the end of the day, then work hard, knock it all out. I'm in the social media agency business. Do you have a suggestion how to automate to generate more income? Well, you got to use one of the tools. You got to build a team around you. Building a team is so important and so tricky. If you get it right, man, the reward is massive. You can't automate without a team. You cannot do it. Let me repeat. I don't care what somebody tells you. You think you're just going to buy real estate, it's all automated? Give me a break. You think you can just, some people think, oh, a website makes it automated. There's right now about 1 billion websites. You think they have all automated income? No, they do not. Automation is it needs more tools than just one single thing. But one of them that's in the forefront is building a team. And then, like I said, multiple markets outside of your time zone is another one. So by coming to London for any conferences, I hope to be in London this summer. I'll usually do a quick seminar when I'm there or do a little meet and greet. I'm 18, no bank will give me a loan. I believe I have a good idea. So got to have a strategy. You don't need a loan from a bank. Tai, my ultimate alternate reality now is showing up for a Silicon Valley Y Combinator type program that you lead in LA for ventures that graduates. Yeah, that's what we're working on. I think that's you, Shara. Is that you? Old friend. If you're creative, then how can you apply it the best? You got to know yourself. There's a personality typing system. There's producers and performers. Producers are better at imagining. Performers are better at doing. You generally want a partner. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. That's a good team. Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer. You see that over and over. Michael Eisner, who did Disney. I forget what the guy's name was that was with him. Most people have a doer and an imaginer. So that's why you need partnerships, or you need people, employees or friends or whatever that film. You can't be everything. That's the key. So I was trying to go 2 hours. Last time I went 4 hours, but I knocked an hour off. Not that I'm trying to go short. I actually start to lose my voice, and then my voice is messed up if I go too long. So remember, key takeaways from here, $11 an hour can be a doctor's salary if you get it all day. And the way to get it all day is to understand that automation is the key. It's multifaceted. One of the facets is building a team of people who are helping you. It sounds simple. It is simple, but you need to know how to do it. It's not as simple as just going, hey, who wants to be on my team? You need to go into multiple markets. Asset classes don't matter as much. Doesn't matter if you go into fitness or health, except you have to go into the thing. Remember I said the 80-20 rule? 80% of your day should be something you're interested in, curiosity. And then you have to think like an investor. Does this have cost versus what I get? Don't worry about the cost. Poor people think about the cost. Rich people think about what they get for the cost. If you gave Warren Buffett he spends $1 billion and he makes back $1.2 billion, he's good. He'll do that deal all day as long as he knows it's a legit deal. You should know that, okay? If you are starting out, most of your investment should be in knowledge, not in a piece of real estate. Because knowledge is in your brain. It's recession proof. It doesn't matter about the cycles the only thing, be careful if you drive a motorcycle or something. Wear a helmet. Because all you got to do is protect your brain. Because that thing is yours until the day you die. No one can take it away from you. Henry Ford, who started Ford Automotive, he said, you could take away everything. It's interesting what he said. He said, take away everything I have and give me the team around me, the knowledge and the team, the knowledge in his head and the knowledge in his team. And he said, I'll make it all back. He said, just don't take the knowledge and the team. You can take my bank account. And sometimes Donald Trump, he had all this money in the 80s. At the end of the 80s, he took his eye off the ball. He lost $9 billion. Now, he still had the team. He's had his same assistant, right-hand woman that helps him. He's had her for like 20 or 30 years. She was still with him. He had the knowledge in his own head. Boom. He's $16 billion up now. He gained the $9 billion, and I think last time I checked, he's up $7 billion, right? Knowledge. Donald Trump is a knowledgeable guy. And I know a lot of successful people now, and I've never met a dumb person at the top. I've never met a person, if they're in finance and I go, what's a debenture? They know the answer. If you made Steven Spielberg and you ask him what an extreme close-up is, he's not going to be like, extreme close-up, never heard of that before. No, he knows everything that I know about film and 1 trillion% more. That's how it goes. So if you want to be at the top of the game, if you want to be at that crossroads and not spiral down, it's knowledge. It's always knowledge. So keep reading, keep finding mentors, keep investing in your own brain. Sorry if I didn't get to answer everybody's questions. Now the button will be up and then it will come down. Remember, don't be a thumbsucker. Don't focus on the risk. Focus on the reverse risk. What if what I'm saying is the truth? What if I'm saying that this program is revolutionizing people's finances? I did the program. They're my videos. It's not like I'm selling somebody else's that I don't know the stuff that I just recorded another one yesterday, and I was thinking, every time I record them, I'm like, I need to raise the price. And, you know, I'm not greedy or anything like that, but I'm like, oh my God, I would pay $9.97 for one of those tools. And if you go into all 3 of the programs, you know, that's almost 200 videos. 200, they're not videos, they're tools. And they're easy to listen to. They're not, you know, 67-day mentor program is a whole way how to think. And those are longer videos. These are like concise, boom, 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 what you need to know. They're not too short and they're not too long. You get in, get out, then you go out and execute. All right, so that button will be up for a few minutes after this. And those of you I saw some of you are already in the program, awesome. Once you fill it out, credit card, next page, you will see a scheduler. Schedule the call. It'll be Maya, it'll be James, it'll be David, might be Nathan. There's about 4 people on my team that will call you, welcome you to the program. I'll answer all your questions one-on-one. It's on your schedule. You can do it on the weekend, whenever is good for you. And then you're in, okay? You can get started today, okay? So thanks so much. And last thing I want you to do, and this is important. People forget to do this. I want you to leave one strategy item. Just one. Don't do 2. Remember what I said? The man or woman who chases 2 rabbits catches none. Just figure out one thing you're going to take away. So I'm going to ask here in this room a few people. What's the one biggest takeaway that's you think you can implement to change your life? So, we'll start here. Go on. Oh, we'll hand a microphone. And then while you're listening to this, you write your own below here, okay? Remember, people who don't participate, that's called kinesthetic learning, they're just knowers. The step to mastery is when, the Dalai Lama talks about this, the 3 steps. People who hear, people who comprehend, and people who have instinctual change. So you got to have instinct, and that starts by doing stuff.
Imagination is the beginning of everything.
Imagination is the beginning of everything. So how are you going to take that? Like I said, I spend a little bit of time every day. The shower for me works the best. I have made more money for myself in the shower thinking, and that's just knowing yourself, water. And you know, one of my first big businesses, the first business I did that really made millions of dollars, started as a 7-figure business, was I had the idea of swimming laps in a pool. My old house, which by the way is in that Cops movie that came out with one of the Wayans brothers this year. My house I saw it in. I was like, that's my old house. But it had a swimming pool, and I remember swimming laps, and I remember I was like, you push off the wall, and I remember thinking of the name. I could not figure out the name, and it was a good name, and it worked. And ever since then, like sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna take 3 showers. The best thing I could do would be take 3 to 4 showers a day. In Brazil, my friends in Brazil, it's so hot, they're like, we already do that. So, but not, that might not be your way. I have friends that have good ideas when they jog. I've tried that. I have 0 ideas when I jog. I hate jogging, kind of. I like running and basketball, but just jogging is boring. So all I can think about when I'm jogging is, when is this over? So I have good ideas now playing ping pong, but water for me, but you got to know yourself. Some of you will have good ideas by talking a lot to a big crowd. It'll inspire you mentally. That'll trigger imagination. I think there's about 4 main environments that you have to figure out your best. For mine, I don't think it's the water. It's my brain is a little more ADD naturally. So when I'm underwater, I know that nobody can call me, nobody can text me. I can't be distracted by texting or checking my phone because there's water and I don't have a waterproof iPhone. I once dropped it in the bathtub or in the toilet one time. And never drop your phone, never text while you pee. Because I did that one time and it shot out of my hand and I was like, I don't even want that iPhone anymore. I'm just gonna try to flush it down the toilet. So the one environment, some of you like me, I need a hyper-focused environment. That's why I think better at night. Some of you are social imaginers, so you should get out and brainstorm in big groups. That's my secondary. I do pretty well with that. Some of you do well under intense like exercise kind of things. That is not me, okay? And some of you do well by kind of writing, like the note takers. And I don't, that's not that, that's, meh. So know yourself. That's what Plato and Aristotle and Socrates taught thousands of years ago. You gotta know yourself. Everybody's a little different, okay? So for you, that's my advice. Imagine, but pick an environment you imagine well. Jonas?
For me, I think what was really interesting is that visualization doesn't necessarily correlate to earning money. You
Right.
really have to think of a strategy. And yeah.
Yes. Remember, optimists don't live as long as pessimists. That's the true stats. People don't like to hear that, but you can't argue with facts. And so people would just visualize all day and just, oh, I'm rich. I'm already rich. Do. That's not what I said to do. I said imagine an alternate reality. Be like, I am broke as hell, but what if? That's the key word. So visualizing, I tend to think, it's a little bit semantics, but I tend to think it doesn't work as well. And that's why I don't. The reason, by the way, they think optimists don't live as long is because they're like, I can eat everything I want. It'll work out great. Sure, I'm 200 pounds overweight, but you know what? I love myself. My mom loves me. And God dang it, so does the world, and I'll be fine. And then heart attack, they're dead. So where pessimists are like, oh, if I know myself. If I eat this Twinkie too much, I'm gonna freaking have acid reflux, and then that's gonna turn it. And so like, you don't want to be a hyper pessimist, but you definitely don't want to be a hyper optimist visualizer. I just read that. It's in a new textbook where they did that, and optimists died significantly. It wasn't like 1 month different. It was like 4 years different. So, yeah, Yasmin.
My biggest takeaway would probably be when you said, like, what would you
Hold it up close.
What
Yeah.
would change in your life if you, like, imagine an alternate reality?
Okay.
And I was like, wow, like, I have all these pieces, and I need to make it these pieces. Like,
Right.
how to put it together to get that alternate reality.
Yes. So yeah. So what Yasmin, I've done that too, where you have like all these unrelated ones. So be careful of that. Like some people imagine, oh, I have a Lamborghini. Oh, I have a awesome husband, wife. Oh, I feel great. Oh, but what you have to do is integrate them all into one. Like how are they all related? Because that is called a strategy, by the way. So if you're a general in an army, you don't just go, all right, Division 1, randomly go attack here, you randomly attack, and you know what? I'm an optimistic general, and I can just visualize us winning this war. No, you'll be dead, and so will all your soldiers. What you do is you go, you are going to back up these people, so you two work together. You're doing this to help this. So strategy beats ideas. Strategy, strategy, strategy. And strategy, all of you, little practical tip, I'm putting chess, backgammon, poker, and all those games in the office. Play some games of chance. They really help your brain become more strategic. Neuroplasticity, okay? Thanks so much. Those of you on the fence, don't be someone who sits on the fence. You know what people get who sit on the fence? They get to sit on a fence. You don't want to be the person. All right. So click the button if you're interested. If you're not interested, then make that firm decision and don't do it. But think of reverse risk. What if I miss out? Okay. Missing out is worse than trying. Okay. So I will talk to you guys soon. Okay. Thanks so much.